Welcome to Classic Trials. If you're new here, my name is Alita. I'm a lawyer licensed in California and DC, and on this channel, we make sense of the law one bite at a time. In this series, we observe and analyze the play-by-play of some of the biggest trials that have shaped the public consciousness of the American judicial system. In this season, we're working our way through the case of California v. Erik and Lyle Menendez. Growing up in Princeton, New Jersey, and then Beverly Hills, California, these young men had everything they could ever want, or so it seemed, until one night on August 20th, 1989, they approached Jose and Kitty Menendez with newly purchased shotguns. Put on trial for murdering their own parents, they claimed self-defense, arguing they were terrorized in their own home by abusive parents until they could take no more. Which argument is more convincing? Come join and see for yourself. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. I hope you're having a wonderful day. Sorry for getting a late start today. If you guys know, we're not doing this. We usually do this on Mondays. It's another Menendez Monday. Today it's a Classic Trials Tuesday. And when I was posting yesterday about it, the brain was not working to try to come up with a Tuesday kind of a Tuesday little diddle about it. And then someone immediately was like, Classic Trial Tuesday was right there. I was like, oh yeah, of course. So I am, and I apologize to everyone on the West Coast because 7 a.m. is a time to wake up for. So I've been kind of scrambling out of bed and waking up and all this stuff. I have a wonderful mother, you guys. I don't know if I can do this so that you guys can see it, but she just came in and brought me breakfast to have while we're going, not just coffee, but like full food and everything. Mama Bites is wonderful. So it's just so nice to have this little spread right here while I'm working. So I don't have the indie cam, but at least I've got Mama Bites bringing in food. And of course, for those of you who are also followers of Law and Lumber's channel, Rob, I spent the weekend in DC and I hung out with him over the weekend. I also had a lot of family stuff, so I was kind of bouncing back and forth between, but he let me stay at the Lumber Law and Lodging. I can't remember what else. An instruction house where of course he's got the bots, and I requested to take my Legalbytes bot with me so that I could put it in my studio, and he said that was fine. So I've got that's going to journey back with me overseas, and I've got some pens that we made this weekend, like this fidget spinner pen. So I posted on Instagram about it. Let's see if I can get this right. Okay, there's the autofocus, so you can see it's this is like the most satisfying. Oh, come on now. It's like the most satisfying thing in the world. And you can see my nail polish coming off. That's fine. It's like the most satisfying thing ever. Anyway, so there's a bit going on, but it's been really, really great. So what else was I going to talk about? Let's say hi to some folks in the chat, and then we'll get into the actual what we're here to do today. Classic Trials, some more Menendez. Okay, let's see here. We've got, Kit Kat, thank you so much for this. One of the wonderful mods, one of the wonderful mods on the channel, always helping to move things forward and have great dialogue. Kit Kat, please check that you hit the like. I feel like I'm nagging. Yeah. So if you guys are enjoying it, hitting the like does help. So thank you. And thank you, Kit Kat, for the reminder. Let's see. And we've got some folks chatting here. We've got Robbie Dobby. Good morning, everyone. Happy Stash Tuesday. That's a good one too. Stash Tuesday. It could be, if we ever do it on a Sunday, shoulder pad Sunday. I don't know. I was I'm trying to on the fly come up with Big Hair Wednesday, but that it's not a W with hair. Anyway, whatever. We'll get it. Let's see. And coming in with some more, we've got Shireen. Hi there, all of you. Hey, hello, Shireen. Happy to see you here. Another wonderful mod. Bronwyn W. Happy Trial Tuesday, everyone. Happy Trial Tuesday. Good. Divine Inhale with Donna Clifford. Good morning. And let's see, Sandra Ramirez. Hello, Shireen. We've got Sandra. Hi, Sandy. Hope you're doing well. Christian Williams. Hello from DC. Hello, hello. We've got Sarah V. Good morning. Good morning. And I think I may have missed one from Mountain Princess because I see a hello from Mountain Princess. Nick Wilson. Hi all. Hello, Nick. Hope you're doing well. Let's see here. And maybe a little bit more. And kind of scrolling through just to make sure, see if I can catch some people out. We've got KP. Happy Tuesday from Texas. And I apologize if I missed anyone here. And we've got Lakia. Good morning, folks. Good morning. B. Hey all. Hello, B. And happy Tuesday. Happy Tuesday to you as well. And yeah, we've got, hey, Gamer Ducko, good to see you here. And yes, we've got some love for Mama Bites here. Love for Mama Bites. So let's see, going through. Oh, Night Eyes, I need to catch up on with FNF and L&D. Have missed both this last week. They were fun. L&D, Lima was extra spicy. So yeah. Fun Hair Friday. That's a good one, KP. I like that. Melissa Offen, hi from Adelaide, South Australia. Love it. Hello. Welcome. We've got Mary M. Hi from Munich. Love the background view. Thank you. This is actually, so I have streamed from this room before, but I've streamed from the opposite wall with the desk turned that way. I didn't have time to switch things around because I was just so tired when I got in. So this is actually my childhood bedroom. You're seeing the other side of it from what you've seen before. So it's yeah, welcome. And okay, yep. Let's all right, let's see. Celia, hello from Estonia. Welcome. It's been a while since we had someone in the chat saying hailing in from Estonia. So that's wonderful. I'd love to see it. Okay. Anyway, let's get moving, shall we? This is we've got some more today. So we've got 3 witnesses that we are going to be hearing from today. The first is we're going to continue with Charles Wadlington. If you guys remember from last week, last week. If you remember from last week, he was the former tennis coach, and he was talking about how he was coaching both of the boys from when they were little, from basically like the point that they were novices. They hadn't had much experience, and then they very quickly advanced. Not a surprise given how much their father was training them, and how grueling they were. So they very quickly needed like personal instruction, and there was a difference in philosophy on how to coach between Coach Wadlington and Papa Menendez, Jose Menendez. So we've been hearing a bit about that. We're going to finish up with him, and then we've got Meredith Geisler, who was a lifeguard back in New Jersey. And then we are going to hear from Marianne Cano, who is another cousin. So we're it's more cousin testimony, which is probably going to be tough. So we'll see how today goes, but that should really fill up all of our time today. So we can continue on with that. But first, Sarah V, welcome to Bike Club. Thanks so much for becoming a Bike Club member. On Fridays, we've got Bike Club members only live stream for about an hour. It's starting at 10 a.m. East Coast time. So this Friday, it should be able to go on. I've got some family stuff going on at the other end, at the tail end of this week, but I think that time will still be good. It will still happen on Friday, as far as I am planning right now. So keep an eye out for notifications. But for right now, we're moving default. It's normal time, 10 a.m. East Coast time on Friday. So, okay. All right, let's get into it, shall we? Okay. And let me know, as always, if there's any issues with volume or anything.
All right, so let's take our lunch break and resume at 1:30, ladies and gentlemen. Don't discuss the case with anyone or form any final opinions about it, and we'll resume at 1:30. We'll now resume with the trial. The witness is back on the witness stand, and you have another exhibit to mark.
Yes, sir. I have 3 photographs, actually, of duplicates of each, so I'm going to mark each set with the same number with the court's permission. First photograph.
Duplicate 175, the second 176, and the third 177. And if I might approach.
Yes.
Okay.
Actually, let's turn this around.
So now the jury is not in front of them.
I don't think I can reach that, actually.
In with the assist. He's got the good. He's got good reflexes, obviously, because he's a former tennis coach. That is a nice tie, though. It's not a very 90s tie, but it's stripy tie is a letdown.
Now,
It's not a very 90s tie,
showing you
but
the
I like it.
photographs that have been marked 175. Do you recognize who's in those pictures?
Yes,
And who is it?
Erik,
And at approximately what age?
about 12.
And that was during the time that you were coaching him?
Yes,
And if you look at the next photograph, which is 176, do you recognize who's in that picture?
it's also Erik.
At about the same age.
Yes,
Do you notice he has something on his right arm in the wrist area?
his sweatband.
And do you know whether Erik had any marks on him, birthmarks or disfigurements in that area
A birthmark.
on his right arm?
Mm-hmm.
Did he usually wear a sweatband over it?
Yes,
And the third photograph, 177, is that also a photograph of Erik?
yes,
What's he doing?
yes.
What's he doing?
Hitting a forehand.
And is this a characteristic picture of him playing tennis at
Yes.
that age?
Mm-hmm.
He appears, how would you describe his facial expression in this photograph?
Straining.
And was straining typical of the way that he played tennis at 12?
Yes,
Now, when Erik was approximately 14, between 1984 and 1985, did he start to exhibit an unusual type of behavior?
You can answer that yes or no, and then I'll give you an opportunity to explain.
at the end of our time.
This is at the end of your coaching time?
Yes,
There was something about him that was suddenly different?
it was acting funny.
And what do you mean by funny?
Just wasn't, his head wasn't on the court.
Objection to speculation.
Oh, wait.
Let me have the question read back, please.
I mean, he is testifying about what was in his head,
What
but
do you mean by funny?
When you say his head wasn't on the court, you're not speaking literally, I take it. You're speaking,
His concentration was elsewhere.
okay.
there you go.
Did he seem to be having difficulty in self-discipline?
Objection leading and suggesting leading. Sustained.
What appeared to be the difficulty, if you could tell us?
Objection calls for speculation. Sustained.
Was he being?
What makes you say that?
All right.
What did you observe
was
that
he
makes you say
doing?
that? There you go.
He wasn't paying attention, and he would smash the balls as hard as he could, and they would hit the back fence. So that was obvious there was no effort to try to get the ball in.
Now, based on your interaction with him, did he appear to be rebellious, or was this unintentional?
Objection calls for speculation.
Sustained.
Could you figure out what was going on?
Objection irrelevant.
Sustained.
Yeah, they are really up on
You've
these
coached many
objections right
children,
now.
have you not?
Yes,
You've already described Erik as a very willing student, correct?
yes,
Was he in any way being defiant towards you or refusing to listen to you or any of those
Leading.
things?
Objection to cause for speculation irrelevant.
Sustained is also a compound question.
Well, may we approach, Your Honor?
No, it's a compound question.
Was he being defiant towards you?
Objection is vague.
Sustained.
Was he refusing to listen to you?
Yes.
And could you tell why? Was he
Objection to cause for
angry?
speculation.
Objection sustained.
Did he appear to be angry?
Yes.
Did he appear to be angry with you?
Was there an objection?
Yes, it was. an objection.
What was the objection?
It calls for speculation. It is speculative.
Well, at this point, it's unclear as to, you're talking about one specific incident?
No, I'm talking about a pattern of conduct.
All right, the objection is sustained. The answer is stricken.
On any of these occasions, well, first of all, how many times did this happen before your coaching of him ended?
Just the last couple of lessons.
So it was 2 lessons.
Yes.
All right. Did he appear or express any anger towards you?
No.
Did he appear or express any anger towards anybody?
I couldn't tell what he was acting strangely about.
Why did this seem strange to you?
Objection irrelevant.
Sustained.
Whoa. This seems pretty foundational, I think, because I think that what they're getting at is the abuse happening. Because they've some witnesses.
Did you have a
testified about change
conversation
in
with Erik about this behavior of his?
Yes.
And what did he say?
Nothing.
What did you say?
Objection irrelevant.
Overruled.
I told him that basically I told him that I wasn't going to coach him anymore because one, he was acting so strange and it was obvious that he wasn't trying and he wasn't making an effort to stay in the practice, get the balls in, or do any of the things I was telling him to.
Mm-hmm.
And I was fed up with the whole strain of the whole situation with him. And so I told him I wasn't going to coach him anymore because I didn't want to, I'd had it and I didn't want to have any problem with the parents anymore. And so I just told him that I wasn't going to be able to coach him anymore.
Did you tell him that it was his fault that you were quitting?
Objection irrelevant.
Objection, unless there was a response that you are attempting to elicit, the objection is sustained. Do you know
Well-
if there was a response?
I'm trying to get the, well, maybe we just do this. In the letter that you wrote to us in which you set out the dates and times that you coached the boys, did you also set out this conversation with Erik?
Yes.
And did you in that letter write that you had told Erik that it wasn't his fault, but that of his parents?
Yes.
And did you believe that his behavior was somehow being caused by his parents?
Objection irrelevant.
Object-
It's speculative.
Objection sustained.
Have you seen children who basically cracked under too much pressure for athletic competition?
Objection irrelevant.
Sustained.
Yeah. What
I'd
happened
like
with
to
other
approach on
kids
this,
is
Your Honor.
not,
All right, you may.
it's not exactly relevant.
Mr. Wadlington, you
Indicated that when you told Erik that you had basically had it, he didn't say anything. Is that right?
Right.
During these 2 lessons when he was not doing what you were instructing him to do, did he argue with you?
No.
Did he talk back to you?
No.
Was he lippy or mouthy or any of those things?
He didn't say anything.
Did you seek any explanation from him as to what was going on?
No.
I have nothing further on it.
All right, cross-examination.
Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Wadlington, the first time that you ever saw the Menendez family was in 1981, is that correct?
Yes.
And you saw Jose and Kitty and Lyle and Erik at that time.
Yes.
And they came in as a family.
Yes.
And was that at the Hamilton Tennis Center?
Yes.
And at that point, you spoke to the family and arrangements were made for you to give lessons to the defendants in this case.
I didn't speak to the family. It was the arrangements were made between my employer and the family.
Did you see the family on that date?
Yes, I saw them, but I didn't speak with them.
Okay, after that first time that you saw them come in to arrange for these lessons, how long was it before you actually started to give them lessons?
A few days.
A few days? Now, how many hours per week over this 5-year period did you give lessons to the defendants?
About, on average, about 20 hours.
20 hours per week?
Yes.
You seem surprised by that answer. You definitely sounded surprised by
Now, you
that
indicated
answer.
that you did not know the parents very well. Is that correct? You testified to that in direct examination.
He's going to try to impeach him on that.
Object or mistakes of testimony.
Overall,
Would that be fair to say, sir?
That I didn't know them very well?
Yes.
I didn't know them intimately.
Now, you indicated that Jose Menendez told you that you should train the defendants hard and to push them and develop their game, correct?
He told me specifically what to do when I taught them. And he did want me to train them hard.
And he told you that he wanted you to give a lot of attention to his sons.
He wanted me to give preferential treatment.
He thought his sons were special and he wanted you to treat them specially.
sustained,
Did he think his sons were special?
Objection calls for speculation.
sustained.
Yep.
In any event, he told you he wanted you to give his sons preferential treatment, correct?
Yes.
Now, you said that, I guess Jose Menendez had told you how to coach his sons. He told you what he wanted done, correct?
Yes.
And you taught them the way that you wanted to. Is that fair
The
to
way
say?
that I thought was appropriate.
I tried to work in his goals, but with my methods.
And his goals were that his sons would one day be champions in tennis?
Yeah, number one, to be specific.
And you told him to just be their father and you'll be the coach, correct?
Yes.
Now, you were saying that at one point the defendants played in the rain. Was that what you testified to?
Yes.
Now, you were the coach and you did the coaching the way you saw fit, correct?
Yes.
And you coached them in the rain.
Yes.
Jose Menendez wasn't there when they were playing in the rain when you were coaching, was he?
Objection.
I don't-
Definitive.
Overall,
I don't remember if he was there or not.
But that was your call, correct?
Yes.
Now, would it be fair to say that Jose Menendez spent a lot of time with his sons?
I don't know.
Didn't you testify that he spent both days on the weekends practicing with his sons?
No.
You did not.
No.
Did you spend the weekends with the defendants teaching them tennis?
Yes. When they
Oh.
weren't in tournaments.
All day, both days?
No. Just my allotted time.
And how many hours on the weekends was that?
Usually about 2 or 3 hours a day.
Okay, did you testify that they spent the whole week, all day on the weekends practicing tennis?
Yes.
And you only spent about 2 or 3 hours with them?
Or playing tennis in tournaments.
Okay,
And I knew the other coaches that were coaching them as well.
so there were other coaches in addition to yourself that were coaching them at that point.
Yes.
Was it your understanding that Jose Menendez also spent time with his sons trying to help them in their training?
Object to the form of the question.
I'm not sure what he's getting at right now.
overall,
He hit with them, but not much. Usually it was with a professional.
And would it be fair to say that Jose Menendez would come to practices often and watch the practices?
No.
No? So you didn't see Jose Menendez that often then?
Not as often as I saw the misses.
Did you ever go to any tournaments that the defendants were in?
No, with any students, I wouldn't go to the tournaments.
Now, you spoke of Jose talking of his family's tradition of champions and of success, correct?
Yes,
And he told you that he came from Cuba when he was 14 or 15 years old?
yes,
And he told you that he had to make it in this country the hard way,
yes,
and he wanted to be successful in this country?
yes,
And he told you that he wanted his sons to live the life the way he wished his life had been?
So I think that what he's getting at here is that, Jose Menendez was just a parent who cared a lot. He cared a lot. And so, he pushed his sons very hard. Yes, but parents will do that. And sometimes that's what you need in order to get your child to an elite level, which there is truth to all of that. There is truth to the, I mean, if you talk to, any youth that is, or you talk to any family members or family of youth that are performing at an elite level, very often, it's not always the case, but very often you will find parents that are very, very tough on their kids to an extent that it kind of raises eyebrows sometimes. And I'm thinking about 1990s attitudes towards parenting and children is very different than today, where, there's, I think, a bit more flexibility in how we look at, what is supposed to happen at home with kids and how much pressure is the right amount of pressure. And, those kinds of attitudes have changed since the 1990s. So I think that what Kuriyama is getting at here, the prosecutor is getting at here in this cross-examination is, hey, look, Jose was tough. Yeah. But hey, he was an immigrant from Cuba. He had pulled him up by his own bootstraps, and he's, distraction. He pulled him up by his own bootstraps, and he wanted his kids to have the same hunger, the same grit that he did. And so, so he pushed them, yes, but everything was done appropriately. I'm not saying that conclusion is necessarily where people are arriving at. It's not where I have personally arrived at, but I think that is where Kuriyama is going with this. And also, Sandra Ramirez, thank you so much for gifting more Legalbytes memberships, 5 Legalbytes memberships to folks in the chat. Always so kind and so generous. Shibaka Wookie, Melissa Simak, Karen Vaughn, Carlin Crouch, and Mindy were all gifted memberships by Sandra Ramirez. So to those of you, welcome to Bike Club or welcome back to Bike Club. And I hope to see you guys on Friday for our members only live stream. Okay, let's continue on.
no,
Thanks again, Sandra.
Is that what you, do you remember talking to the defense attorneys in this case?
sure,
And that was on January 19th, 1993.
sure. Mm-hmm.
Do you recall telling
Yeah,
the
I
defense
agree. I would
attorneys
agree.
that Jose Menendez wanted, just a second.
And also he's talking about how he's like, well, you never went to the
we had
kids
that
tournament.
His letter, it was 174.
He's saying you never went to the kids tournaments. Jose Menendez went to every single tournament or most of the tournament.
Just a minute, Counsel.
So you didn't see how they were, interacting there. There are also pockets in his
But it's on the second
observation
page,
that they're trying to take advantage of here, or
the fourth full paragraph.
as you would do in a cross
And the last
examination.
part of
And
that
now
statement.
we've got an impeachment here, or attempted impeachment.
Yes. Mr. Wadlington, do you remember telling the defense attorneys in this case that Jose tried to make the children live life his way, or as he would have wished his life to have been? Did you make that statement, sir?
Would you read it again?
Yes. Jose tried to make the children live life his way, or as he would have wished his life to have been.
Yep. What I said, and I think that's a paraphrase of what I said, is that he was trying to make them live a life of athleticism, which he had wanted to live but hadn't. He was trying to live his life through them.
He wanted his sons to succeed
Which-
where he had not.
That can also be true,
sports.
and he can also still be very abusive. So, okay, sure, they
And you
pulled another
indicated that
statement.
the defendants were good. They were
That
your
makes no
favorite
difference to me.
kids. They were nice kids,
Yes, they
Right.
were.
respectful,
Yes.
sophisticated and mature and well-mannered,
Yes.
nicely dressed.
Yes.
Would it be fair to say that the parents did a great job of teaching the defendants to be respectful of their elders and to be well-mannered?
I'm gonna object
Morning,
myself
Andy.
for confusion.
Sustain.
Now, you did not testify as to how you had to discipline the defendants, did you?
I'm gonna object to the question that's argumentative.
Rephrase the question, please.
Yes, Your Honor.
Yeah. Why don't
During
you
this
just ask
period
a
of
question?
time, sir, did you ever have to discipline the defendants?
There you go.
When you were training them?
No.
Not one?
Just the time when I told Erik that I didn't want to coach him anymore.
That was the only time in this 5-year period that you ever had to tell him that you didn't want to coach him anymore?
Right.
Do you remember the same interview with the defense counsel on January 19th, 1993? It's page 1, the 7th paragraph. Where you have it? Where you said that you sometimes disciplined the defendants, them, because they got mouthy on the tennis court. Do you remember that?
No.
You don't remember that?
No.
Did you ever tell the defense attorneys that?
I don't think so.
Would it refresh your present recollection to take a look at this report?
No.
It would not.
I remember talking to them,
Okay. If it were in this
but
report,
I don't think that I ever had to discipline them in any. I don't remember them ever being unruly, except just that time. They were very disciplined kids. They didn't misbehave.
if it appears in this report, would that have been inaccurate?
Objection, Your Honor, it's calling for speculation.
Objection sustained.
Is it your testimony right now that you never had to discipline the defendants ever in this 5-year period that you coached them?
There's also maybe a
I
difference
don't
in.
think that discipline is the proper word.
There you go. I was going to say
I
the
try to
definition
teach
of
them
discipline.
the proper etiquette, but it wasn't as if they were misbehaving and I had to come down on them or something. I didn't do that.
Yeah. Okay.
If they
That was a good
were,
answer.
as you put it, mouthy on the tennis court, what would you do?
I just remind them that they shouldn't. For instance, if they said a bad word, I would tell them that you can't say that bad word and tell them why.
And would they say bad words on the tennis court?
Sometimes, but not very often.
Now, the defendants were, I believe you stated that in the report that they were aggressive tennis players.
I'm going to object to what's said in the report.
Objection sustained. Why don't you ask the question directly?
Were the defendants aggressive on the tennis court?
As in the way that they were playing, or do you mean like aggressive to the other person, or I don't really.
In any way?
They were aggressive as far as they were taught to an attack game and to try to move to the net and to be aggressive in that manner.
And they were big, strong athletes, weren't they?
Objection, Your Honor. 11 and 13.
Well, why don't you rephrase the question to relate to the time frame?
Okay. During this period of time, between 1981 and 1985, Lyle Menendez was 13 to 17 years old, correct?
Yes.
And Erik Menendez was 11 to 15 years old, correct?
Okay.
Were they big, strong athletes?
They were in pretty good shape, but they weren't really strong. They didn't have that much stamina, but they were in good. They were in good shape as far as they weren't fat and they were toned, but they weren't what I classify as a big, strong athlete.
Were they well-developed and well-trained athletes?
Objection, calling for conclusion.
Overruled.
They were, I'm sorry, would you
Yes. Were
specific?
they well-developed and well-trained athletes?
Talking about physically?
Yes.
They were pretty well developed and they were well trained.
I think that this part right here is getting to one of the cousins from last week and the week before, Diane. Remember how she said that that the boys were like 11 and 13 and she was like 23 or something like that. Remember, like there's an age difference between them, and the things that they had did when they kind of went from play to targeting her, that, there was this idea of like, the prosecution tried to, they asked this question, which is a legitimate question, right? Like, how is that possible given the age difference and like potential size difference, like which if you don't have, this is also why it's good to have, photos from the time period, from the actual like visit, to be like, this is what they looked like, this is what you looked like, so that folks can, like understand kind of how these things can happen. But she was like, well, they were strong kids, like they were strong kids. But also we are asking two different witnesses. We're getting two different perspectives on like the physical abilities or physical stature of these boys at that age, coming from a 23-year-old woman that we don't know if she works out a lot at that age. We don't know if she, is particularly active. And then asking a tennis coach who has coached many kids to an elite level, who he himself is in very active shape. I mean, he's going to be in very active shape when he's around these boys. So his perception might be a little bit different than her perception of where these kids are at. So I think that that's what the prosecution is getting at. And it's like, will the jury see the difference between the two? Will they detect? I would think so. Because the jury's trying to analyze all of these things just like we are right now.
In fact, you had testified that you were the number one professional player in New Jersey during that period of time, correct?
Yes.
And Lyle Menendez could beat you, correct?
That was our last meeting, which was about 2 years after I had attained that ranking. Not to diminish his skill level, but he did play very well the last time we played, and he beat me.
Were they mediocre players?
No, they were good players.
In fact, they were the number one players in the Middle States Tennis Association, weren't they?
The last year that I was there, I don't know what Erik's ranking was, but Lyle was.
Okay, so then there's also this possibility, which is he's actually leaning into their athleticism by saying, look, all of that hard work paid off. Yes, it was tough training. Yes, there was a lot that you disagreed with, but it all worked out in the end because they reached that top level, right? And hey, at one point Lyle could beat you. Also maybe part of this is a little bit of hubris or envy or something like that, by the fact that like you didn't achieve top level and you were kind of envious of what these kids could do. And so you tried to hold them back, but Jose wanted to push them forward. There's also a possibility of a lot of these other things. So let's keep watching, and maybe Kuriyama's, motive here will sort of reveal itself a little bit more.
Or top 2 or 3. I'm not sure. There was another couple of kids that were also up there. I don't remember. I have the ranking book, but I don't remember.
Do you remember telling the defense attorneys on this January 19th, 1993 occasion that they were number one in the Middle States Tennis Association?
I remember telling them that they were one of the top ranked, but I didn't know if Erik was number one or not because I wasn't following him that closely at the time.
Now, you had indicated that the defendants were willing students of yours, correct?
They had good attitudes.
And you testified that they wanted to play tennis. They weren't forced to. Be fair to say?
No. They wanted to, but they were also forced to.
Did you testify in direct examination that they were not forced to?
No.
I'd like to discuss the question and answer.
It was a question and the witness answered it. The objection overruled.
Now, at
Ricardo, I
one
think
point
you're
during
right.
your testimony in direct examination, sir, you said that you
And
had
he
a good
seems like he does
relationship
care
with
about
Mrs.
them quite a bit.
Menendez. Correct?
I tried to have a good relationship. I wanted to have a good relationship with her.
Now, she brought the defendants to the practices early in the morning, correct?
It varied. Usually we practiced after school.
Okay, would she bring them to practice?
Sometimes I picked them up from school.
That's interesting.
And would you, when you had practices with the defendants on the weekends, what were the arrangements?
Same normal arrangements. Depending on where we were practicing, they would be dropped off or she would sit up in the gallery and we would practice. Or sometimes I'd go to their house, but she was inside and we would practice at the house.
These practices where you said she would sit up in the gallery, would she sit up watching her two sons play for hours at a time?
She would watch the entire practice.
She spent a lot of time looking after her sons,
Objection
didn't she?
form of the question on a calls for conclusion.
Yeah.
Objection sustained.
Yeah.
Was this on a fairly regular basis that she would bring her sons and she would sit up there for hours at a time watching the practice?
Yes, either she was the transportation or I was the transportation.
Now, sir, you said that in 5 years that you saw Mrs. Menendez, you did not see her smile one time. Is that correct?
Yes.
Not once.
No.
And you never heard her ever say one little kind word to either defendant. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Now, when Mrs. Menendez sat up in this gallery for hours at a time, what did she do?
Watched or read? I don't know. I wasn't watching her. I was playing tennis. You couldn't see her very well. She could see the court, but I was down inside the screens, so I really couldn't tell what she was doing.
She wasn't sitting up there booing the defendants, was she?
I have no idea what she was doing.
Did she throw rotten tomatoes at
Your
him?
Honor, I'm going to object to this.
All right, it is argumentative. Why don't you
Yeah.
rephrase the question?
Mr. Wadlington, you had testified that a lot of your students had overbearing parents, correct? That wanted them to succeed, wanted them to be the best. That fair to say?
Yes.
Were there other students that you had where you didn't see both parents? Or
Sure.
maybe you would see just one parent?
That's common.
Usually, unless it was I saw usually both parents, unless it was, of course, a single parent home.
Your Honor, could the court ask the witness to back up the interest in the
If we
mic?
just do that.
Yeah, he's breathing
Otherwise,
into that mic. This could all be solved with a pop filter, but this is before the days of YouTube where that was
Sounds like a ball.
more commonly known.
Not quite.
Mr. Wadlington, I believe your testimony was that with respect to the overbearing parents that you saw, that Jose was one of the worst. He was one of the most demanding. Is that right?
He was what I considered the worst parent of the people that I had coached. And most of the high achieving students' parents were demanding, but he took it a step further.
Now, was he the harshest or most demanding parent that you had ever been involved with?
He was the harshest person I'd ever met.
Okay. Isn't it true that your own father was even harsher than Jose and you received abusive behavior from your father? Isn't that correct?
Objection relevant?
My father was not as bad as Mr. Menendez, but he was pretty abusive.
Now, did you tell the defense attorneys, you explained that your own father was even harsher than Jose was?
No, he trained me harder He trained me harder,
Okay,
but he was not emotionally harsh as harsh as Jose. He had a soft side to him, and after he had been mean or something, or driven me a little too hard, he would come back and talk to me later and apologize and explain himself.
So I will say this is going to impact the jury, I think, on the whole the physical abuse aspect of the tennis coaching. At least, I mean, the defense may need to come in on redirect and clarify just how much did this coach see of their at-home practice. Like, is he talking about that his own father trained him harder than what he was giving them on Jose's instruction? Or did his own father train him harder than what the boys were getting overall between him and what Jose was giving at home? Like, that's another question here. So it's not exactly clear to me what exactly he's saying here in comparing his own personal situation with his own father and Jose with the kids. But that's interesting, though. It's interesting. And I do think that it does reveal a soft spot for him to say, like, that he has a particular sensitivity to these things. And that can be taken one way or another. Either I have a lot of empathy for this person, that he is able, that he probably detected that and he tried to soften the blow for the kids, or to say he's overly sensitive because of his own personal experiences. That's a two-edged sword. There's two ways that you can look at that. And depending on how people looked at it in 1993, it might be different than how people might view that today, because psychology has come a long, long way since the 1990s.
so your father trained you as well.
That's argumentative.
Sustained.
Did you use
Right
the
on, listen with those
words
objections.
in explaining?
Counsel, could you cite us what
Yes, it's the first page of your report.
But
1, 2, 3, 4, 5 paragraphs down.
Counsel, there's
All right, why don't you just is there a date on this?
Yes, January 19th, 1993.
and
5th paragraph, first sentence. Mr. Wadlington, didn't you tell the defense attorneys that your own father was even harsher than Jose was?
You're not going to object to counsel stopping there unless you read the rest of that paragraph.
Ooh. Improper
Did you want to be
impeachment?
heard on that, Mr. Kuriyama?
Or at least the next sentence.
I'll finish the paragraph.
All right.
Now. You also comment, first of all, do you agree that you stated that?
Objection, that's argumentative.
Overruled.
I object that it's completely out of context and not referenced.
There you go.
Well, he's going to read the next sentence, so let's start one thing at a time.
With respect to that sentence I just read, did you say that?
Could you read it again?
Yes. It reads this way, quote, he explained that his own father was even harsher than Jose was.
Your Honor, I think without the next sentence.
All right, no, first of all, assuming there's more to it in that sentence, did you say that part of it?
Not in that manner.
Okay.
What I said was that my father had driven me physically harder, that I trained harder, that I worked harder, that I had to run more, hit more balls, do more physical training. And he was, he was hard on me, but not in the emotional sense.
And
That's a
you told
clarification. That's
Jose
important.
Menendez that he was being too hard on his sons.
Objection, Your Honor, I was going to read the rest of the sentence.
Yeah, you indicated you would read the rest of that, Mr. Kuriyama.
Mr. Wadlington, listen to this. He also commented that, and this is referring to you. I'm sorry, counsel.
Yes, let's not interrupt. Let's not interrupt. And one person is questioning the witness. If counsel has an objection, address it to the court.
He also commented, though, that in his family there was love from both his father and mother. He felt that helped to offset some of the more abusive behavior that he experienced at the hand of his father. Did you make those statements?
There's a further statement here, which places it in context, so I think it's a misleading.
I mean, something after that?
Yeah, I read that
Okay, well,
entire paragraph.
Let's do one thing at a time here. And That was the question of Mr. Kuriyama. Do you remember saying that to the lawyers when you spoke to them?
Can you read it again?
Sure.
You explained that your own father was even harsher than Jose was. You also commented, though, that in your family there was love from both your father and your mother, that you felt that helped to offset some of the more abusive behavior that you experienced at the hand of your father.
That's pretty much what I said, but if you keep in mind that it was without an emotional abuse type thing, it was more of a physical driving type harsh behavior.
So one of the things that is bothering me about that impeachment is that that's not word for word his statement. That is a reproduction summarization of something that he said. Like these are notes from the defense on their conversation with him, on their interview with him, and then they summed up what it was that he said, which you can lose some nuance, you can lose some details that he can I was going to say he can object to that, but like not in the legal sense, but he's very, it's very reasonable for him to point out, like, that's not exactly what I said. Like Diane did that as an example. One of the cousins, when they had the same kind of thing, they had summarization of her interview with the defense. And so they tried to use that as to impeach her. And she was like, well, this is not exactly what I said. This is someone else's notes on what I said, which is really good to point out, because it signals to the jury, like, this is not I'm not getting caught on a 1-for-1. This is someone else, memorizing or paraphrasing what it is that I said. So there's that aspect of this. Then we've got and the jury might look at this differently. They might look at it saying defense is just being too difficult here. Or they might be looking at it as prosecution seems like they're trying to hide the ball, because the defense is actually, in my opinion, I think the defense is doing a good job here of being like, this is being taken out of context. We want him to read more from this paragraph, because it's only proper if he does that, because then things are put into context and so that the jury can actually get a good understanding. So the jury is undoubtedly hearing that. Those are all of those arguments that are happening in open court are little signals to the jury. Hey, the prosecution just wants to show you little bits and pieces over here, but we want you to see everything, or more at least, that is going to be helpful for you to understand what's really going on here. So, like, that can also give a particular impression to the jury, like, hey, prosecution's trying to be a little bit sneaky. Okay.
He didn't insult me,
Okay, so Mr. Menendez wasn't the harshest person you had ever seen
Objection.
with respect to tennis. Is that fair to say?
Overruled.
No, he
Okay.
he was the harshest person I'd ever met.
Oh, that's an answer.
Now, there are differing coaching techniques. Would that be fair to say?
Many.
And Jose had one and you had another, correct?
Well, Jose's was what he read in Tennis Magazine, and he was never a player, so he had no basis for an opinion.
Oh,
As a father of the defendants, he had his own technique that he wanted you to implement with his sons. Is that fair to say?
Right. He would read something, and then he would try to tell me to coach them in that manner.
So you would agree that there are differing ways, differing techniques in
yeah,
coaching?
just because that's correct. Because they have to turn them over to one another in
Now,
discovery.
You testified with respect to Lyle Menendez that you spoke to him about his philosophy at 15 years of age, when he was 15 years old, correct?
We talked about his goals.
And you said that Lyle Menendez told you that his goal was to open a restaurant, be successful on his own.
Yes.
And he did not want his father to control him.
That mistakes the testimony.
Sustained.
Did Lyle Menendez tell you that he didn't want his father to control him? He wanted to do it by himself?
No, he said that he didn't want to use his father's money.
You're in
He
great
wanted
shape.
to
I think that's
do
correct.
He wanted to make
would
his
agree.
own money, that he didn't want help, he was independent. He wanted to prove that he could do it on his own.
So he wanted to succeed by himself.
Yes.
Okay, there was other testimony, Mr. Wadlington, where you said that on these few times that you saw Jose and Kitty Menendez, that they were not passionate.
Objection,
Correct.
that mistakes the testimony.
Sustained.
Did you testify that, in your opinion, Jose and Kitty Menendez were not passionate?
Objection,
Overruled.
If I use that word, then I use that word. My statement was that I didn't see a good relationship, a normal, healthy husband-wife relationship.
When you say passionate, what are you talking about?
Desire and love and kindness and touching and hugging and that kind of stuff.
Now, Mr. Wadlington, you testified in direct examination that you're not a touchy person, correct?
Not to boys.
Oh,
Okay. Would it be fair to say that you're not demonstrative out in the public? I mean, do you make out with your wife in public or what?
objection, Your Honor.
whoa, not relevant.
Objection sustained.
Okay.
Not relevant
What
at
did you
all.
mean
That's
by
a low
this,
blow, blah, blah.
Wanting them to be passionate in public.
Objection, Your Honor, the witness never said he wanted to.
Objection. Okay, let's not argue. Just
Okay.
objection assumes facts, not in evidence. Objection sustained.
Okay. Now, you also testified that in the 5 years that you coached the defendants, that you never saw the parents support the defendants or care for the defendants. Is that what you said?
No. I said I never saw them give love, hugs, kindness, tenderness.
Okay.
They supported them financially and all of that, but
That's
there
a good
wasn't
answer.
the
That's a good answer. He's really sticking to his guns
typical
here.
family-loving Ozzie and Harriet type.
And just going on and
Thing.
on and
When you
explaining
say
on.
that they supported them financially and all of that, what do you mean by all of that?
They gave them all the physical needs, but they didn't give them any emotional fulfillment or needs.
Hand.
Isn't it true that the parents would sit up for hours on end in the gallery and watch their children? Would that be support in your opinion?
Objection, Your Honor.
Sustained.
Do you consider support of the parents that they spent time watching their children from the galleries on hours on end? Do you consider that to be support?
Not emotional support.
What kind of support is that?
That's a physical support. They're there to let them have a tennis lesson. It has nothing to do with building a relationship with your child.
Isn't it true, sir, that the defendants had a very close relationship with each other and with their family?
Objection
They had a
sustained.
close relationship with each other. I don't know what their relationship was with their family.
There you go. That's a
Do
fair
you
answer
remember
based on
telling
what
the
he's
defense
observed.
attorneys on January 19th, 1993, that the defendants had a very close relationship? Yes. Actually, it's the fourth page of the packet, and it's March 12th, 1993. It's the first page of the March 12th, 1993 report. 6 paragraphs down. Mr.
Okay.
Wadlington, do you recall saying that the defendants or the boys had a very close relationship with each other and with their family? They never complained about their parents at all. Do you remember telling the defense attorneys that?
I remember saying that they never complained, but I don't remember saying when I said they had a close relationship with each other that they had a close relationship with their parents, because I didn't know. I never saw that. I never saw any relationship.
Would it refresh your present recollection to take a look at this report?
No, I remember.
So if you would have said it that day, it would have been inaccurate?
Objection, Martin.
Overruled.
I'm saying I don't remember saying that they had a close relationship with their parents.
Do you remember saying that they had a close relationship with each other and with their family?
No, I don't. I just remember saying that they had a close relationship.
So we're gearing up for an impeachment here. He might
Now,
be
with
starting to
reference
fight a
to
little
the
bit too much as a
psychological
witness.
ploy of trying to get your opponent off his timing, would that be the sort of thing that John McEnroe does?
Well, we don't know. There are two theories. One is that he's a prima donna and it happens spontaneously. And then there are those that argue that he does it as a psychological ploy.
Okay.
Watch back up.
Oh, sorry.
Sir, you had indicated that at one point Erik Menendez had a serious problem. He had an ingrown toenail, correct?
Yes.
And
Excuse me.
Objection overruled. Cancel stand.
and you got medicine for Erik Menendez, and he told you not to tell his mom because she would want to take him to the doctor. Is that your testimony?
Yes.
Are you a medical doctor?
No.
Argumentative.
Overruled.
You're not?
No.
He indicated to you that Mrs. Menendez wanted to get him proper medical aid by
Well,
taking him to a doctor for
proper.
this treatment of this situation, correct? Is that
Yes. That she would take care of it.
right? Now, you testified, sir, that you were fired because you stood up to Jose and you told him to just be a father and let you be the coach, correct?
Yes, because I confronted him that day. Mhm.
Now, you also indicated that you told the defendants that you were going to stop teaching them because Erik was a discipline problem. Isn't that correct?
No. I told him I wasn't going to coach him anymore because I couldn't handle the whole situation and that I wasn't going to be blamed for his non-performance.
At that point, he was a discipline problem to you, wasn't he?
Well, he just wasn't, I don't call it a discipline problem to me. He just wasn't doing what I wanted him to do, and I wasn't going to tolerate him not trying. He wasn't trying, and it was obvious, and I had too many other people wanting my time, and I wasn't going to spend it with him if he was going to act like that.
So you had indicated that he was not trying anymore and that you were fed up with the situation. You would not coach him anymore. You told him that, correct?
Yes.
I have nothing further at this time, Aaron.
Redirect.
Definitely going to be redirect. Okay, hang on. I've got to do something real quick. I'll be right back. Okay, talk amongst yourselves. All right, and we're back. Okay, thank you guys for the quick little break. Had to go take care of something. And now we're back. We're back on redirect. Okay. Glad to see that there wasn't too much chaos in the chat in my absence. Okay, all right, let's continue on.
Mr. Wadlington, you were asked whether the Menendez parents and their children came into you and they came in as a family. Did this appear to you to be an ideal family throughout the 5 years that you had contact with them?
Objection big as to the ideal family.
Sustained.
Mr. Curry, I may ask you whether it was true that they referring to the family, came into you as a family. Do you recall that question?
Yes.
Did they present themselves as a family in the way that people think of families?
Vague, objections.
It is vague.
All right. Do you have an idea of someone coming to you as a family, as coming to you as a group of people who are harmonious and presenting themselves as a family unit?
Objection again, vague.
I think the witness understands that, Your Honor.
Right. It's, what did you mean by family? I think that's basically what they're asking.
As a group.
And after that first time when they met you as a group, did they, in your eyes and in your experience, remain as a group as defined by someone working together, a group of people working together in some way?
Objection again, this is vague. Expected.
Overall. You understand the question?
Yes, sir. I can't remember them again together at one time like that. It was either Kitty and the boys or Joe and the boys or the boys.
And who did the talking when this group came into you when you first met them?
Mr. Menendez talked to Mr. Wooten.
All right. And I think you said that you gave an approximation of 20 hours per week that you were actually training them?
When I coached them for an extended period, it would be 20 hours a week. But for some reason, they would come to me for a while, and then they were also going to a couple of other pros in the area at the same time. And then they would stop for a couple of months or a week and go to some other pro for a while. And so it varied. But if they were with me the whole time for one whole week, then we usually did about 20 hours. If they weren't in a tournament. If they were in a tournament on the weekend, then I would have them about 10 hours.
And so you were aware that they were being trained by other people at the same time that you were devoting that approximately 20 hours a week to them?
It was an open
Yes.
relationship.
And was that the basis for your testimony on direct examination, that they were pretty much working full-time at tennis?
Yes, I knew the other coaches that they were going to, and none of us had enough time to give them all the time that they were demanding, and neither did we have the energy to keep up with them.
By the way, was the tennis community, and by that I mean the coaches, a fairly tight-knit group of people in this area?
Yes,
Would you talk to the other coaches about your experience with the Menendez family?
sometimes,
And would they talk to you about their experience with the family?
sometimes.
And you testified as to your reasons for leaving the job on cross-examination. Did Mr. Menendez's reputation in the tennis community have anything to do with your leaving?
Objection calls for hearsay.
Overall.
No, I didn't care about what other people thought. I just didn't want to deal with it anymore. The other coaches had,
Okay, you've answered the question.
What was his reputation in the community in which he operated in with these tennis people as to being problematic?
most of the coaches and the club owners disapproved of his methods and didn't get along with him, and there was some problems.
Was he well known as a problem parent? Not only by you, but in this community of tennis coaches?
Yeah, he was known as a problem, as a pain.
You said that he was the worst person you'd ever dealt with.
Objection misstates the law.
Sustained.
You said he was the harshest person you had ever dealt with, correct?
Overall.
Yeah.
And how many parents had you dealt with in your coaching career up to the point in time when you started dealing with the Menendez family?
A lot. Well over 1,000.
1,000 parents?
Yeah, sets.
Sets of parents. All right. And in that group of 1,000 parents, would it be fair to say that there were some overbearing parents?
Sure.
And is it also fair to say, based on what you testified, that Jose was the harshest among that 1,000 parents that you personally dealt with in a coaching situation?
That's going to be one of the last questions, I think.
Yeah. Yes.
Is there some doubt about that in your mind?
No, I had to think of them all.
All right. You were asked about certain statements that you made to the lawyers in this case, and you were read parts of a statement that you made about a specific topic regarding the father, and I want to read to you what I think is a full statement and ask you whether this isn't the full context of this statement.
All right, just without your commenting on it.
Do you remember when you talked to the lawyers in the case on January 19th, 1993, making the following statement? He, meaning you, said that he spent a lot of time trying to counteract what he thought were the erroneous messages being transmitted by Jose. I'm in the third paragraph of the January 19th statement.
Which page?
Page 1, third paragraph.
Michael.
I remember making the statement to the lawyers on January 19th, 1993. He, meaning you, said that he spent a lot of his time trying to counteract what he thought was the erroneous messages being transmitted by Jose. He clearly hated Jose and saw in him behavior he considered destructive. He explained that his own father was even harsher than Jose was. He also commented, though, that in his family there was love from both his father and his mother. He felt that that helped to offset some of the more abusive behavior that he experienced at the hands of his father. He contrasted this experience.
Objection, Your Honor, at this point, may approach.
All right.
Going to
Or
approach.
love by either parent. Was that the full context of the statement that was drawn to your attention?
He just wanted
by
to
the
interrupt
prosecution?
all that reading.
Yes,
That looks like.
except I think hate is not the word. I just couldn't stand the guy, but I didn't hate him. I just didn't like him. I mean, that was just like, when I hate your guts or something like that. But I didn't hate him. I just couldn't stand him because I saw him being mean to the boys.
Right. You were also read a part of a statement, and this is counsel on page 3 of the same statement. And just reading that, refresh your memory as to the context that remark came up that was referred to by the prosecution.
Yes.
And is it true that you were discussing with the lawyers and the fact that did you say to the lawyers in reference to that remark, which was brought out by the prosecution, that
Yes, you can ask him the context in which that statement was made. I think it's appropriate.
can you, from your memory and after looking at this to refresh your memory, tell us what the context of the conversation was?
Sure. That he was trying to live that he wanted to accomplish through the boys sports success that he had not had. That he wanted to live his life through them, so to speak.
And would he talk ad nauseum about the family history?
Objection sustained. It's argumentative. Assumes facts, not evidence at this point.
Would he talk to you about the family history in the context which you just related?
Yes.
Overall,
And would he just mention that briefly, or was that a constant theme with him?
It wasn't a constant theme, but it was mentioned often.
And was it mentioned in the process of demanding unreasonable physical things from the children, or in some other context?
I don't think it was to get physical things from the children. I think it was just to keep reminding them that they were going to have to obtain those high ranks and successes and gold medals and everything like that, because it was a family tradition.
You were asked whether or not it was true that Jose Menendez stated to you that one of his goals was that they be number one in tennis, correct?
In the world.
Yeah, and did he indicate that that was for the boys' benefit, or for his own benefit, or someone else's?
He didn't indicate that it was for anyone's specific benefit. It sure wasn't the boys' benefit, whatever was his reasoning.
objection sustained. The answer is
Did-
stricken.
Did Jose Menendez state to you that his goal of making or having the boys be number one was for their own benefit, or their own good in any way?
No.
And did you form an impression based on your contact with that family for that 5-year period as to whose goals he was furthering in trying to make them number one?
Objection, false or speculation.
Rephrase the question, please.
Did you form an opinion based on your contact with that family for 5 years as to whose goals he was furthering?
Objection, improper opinion.
Objection sustained.
You were,
Oh.
were asked if the kids were aggressive on the court, correct?
Yes.
And you were asked whether Jose Menendez was trying to help them in their training. Do you remember that question?
Yes.
Would he physically intimidate them in any way when he was on the court with them in your presence?
Mm.
And by that I mean by his bearing or anything else.
Sustained.
Did you see him on the court in physical contact or in close contact with the boys in your presence?
Objection, comprehensive.
Overall.
Yes, he would get them off to the side and get up in their face and get down. Get over them. He was a big man, and he'd like get right up and look down on them, and in a very soft, calm, which seemed kind of a threatening voice, say you had to do this or that.
Sorry?
Speculation, motion, speculation.
Yes, the objection is sustained. The answer is stricken in regards to the nature of, well, I'm going to strike the whole answer because it's really impossible to edit it, so you can re-ask the question.
All right.
Objection sustained. The answer is stricken.
Did you see Jose Menendez in physical contact with either of the Menendez boys on the tennis court or off the tennis court between the period of time that you dealt with him, 1981 and 1985?
Overall.
Yes.
And could you describe how he would physically be in contact with them? Just your observations of how he related to them physically when you saw him in these situations.
Yes, he would get very close to them and loom over them and tell them what they should do.
And would he tell them what they should do in a soft, soothing voice or in some other manner of voice?
A soft voice, but not soothing. More of a ominous, soothing voice.
And by
Objection is the last part.
All right. Everything from the word more to the end is stricken as conclusion.
did he use a tone of voice that to you was threatening?
Sustained.
Did he attempt to intimidate you physically on the court in the presence of the boys?
Yes.
How would he do that?
He tried to get up and loom over me.
And how physically would the boys act in his presence when he was doing this?
Sort of like in a trance,
Could you,
just like showing no emotion, like just spaced out and, not moving. Just
as you said that you moved your eyes in some way, did you mean to indicate by that that they had some sort of a look on their face?
yeah, they look like afraid. No just like robotic type.
Thank you, that's all I have.
Any examination on behalf of Erik Menendez?
One subject, two questions.
All right, we're counting, Leslie.
Mr. Wadlington, do you think you could demonstrate for us the tone of voice that Jose Menendez would use when he was looming over and in the face of the boys? That's the first question. You can answer that yes or no. Either you think you can or you don't think you can.
I can try.
Okay. Would you do that?
Well, let's see if I can think of an example.
Okay.
He would say something to the effect of, and they'd be off by themselves, but I could still overhear a bit of it, and he would say like, if you don't do what I tell you to do, you're not going to do what you want to do, and you're not going to be number one. And you don't want that, do you? You don't want to not do your best. You want to make sure that you accomplish your goals, things like that. It sort of it wasn't a, can I give the alternate of what I think he should, no?
Sure.
No, you're just giving you've just attempted to replicate what you said was his speech pattern. Is that right?
Okay, yes,
Okay.
sir.
Now, did he have a very low tone of voice when he wanted one? I mean, would he use a very low tone of voice?
In these instances, there was a specific tone.
A special tone reserved for those instances?
Objection, mistakes evidence, it's leading into justice.
Sustained.
Do you mean there was a tone that you only heard during these kinds of incidents?
Yes,
And when he would be using it, where would he be looking?
right down in their eyes,
And
over
would,
them.
and would they be looking up into his eyes?
I don't think that they could look at him. I think they sort of looked
Down.
at his neck.
Okay. So they couldn't see up into his eyes?
They could have if they would have looked up, but I think that they were scared.
Did they look?
The last part of that statement.
All right, the objection is sustained. The last part of the answer regarding he thinks they were scared is stricken as a conclusion.
How did they look? With respect to their emotional state, when he's doing this, how did they look? Did they look scared? Did they look happy? Did they look what?
Objections calls for speculation.
Sustained.
Can you detect can you detect fear on someone's face?
Yes,
Could you detect fear?
Objection, no foundation.
Well, I'm going to sustain the objection. It calls for speculation by the witness.
Do you ever go to horror movies, Mr. Wadlington?
Irrelevant.
Sustained. Let's move on to something
Yeah,
else.
they're
Could
gonna.
you tell by looking at their facial expressions, their
This is
body
more than two
language,
questions, Leslie.
the way they
I knew-
held themselves during these years that you coached Erik and Lyle when they were afraid?
Objection calls for speculation.
Sustained.
But, Your Honor,
Counsel, let's not argue it. Go on to something else.
did that tone of voice that Jose Menendez used appear to get results from his children?
yes,
When he would talk to them that way, would they then proceed to do exactly what he told them?
yes,
Okay, we'll take a recess. We'll resume at 20 minutes to the hour. Don't discuss this case with anyone or form any final opinions about it, and we'll resume at 20 minutes to the hour. I'd ask the council be here at 3:30. And we're about to resume with the trial. Both juries are present and all parties are present. You may call your next witness.
Okay. Before we do that, we've got some questions to answer here that I would like to bring up. Let's see. Mary M says, what is the actual day of the trial on this day? Is it winter, summer, spring? It might explain some of their wardrobe choices. I was trying to keep an eye on the chat to see if someone was going to answer this in the chat, and I don't recall seeing anything. I actually don't know. I'm not sure. But I will say this is Los Angeles. The temperature doesn't, I mean, there is a change in temperature, right? You know, summer is hot, winter is cold, but California cold is not the same as cold on the East Coast, for example. So I don't like having a winter wardrobe versus a spring and summer wardrobe in California is not the same as you would see in, let's say, Europe, you know, where you can actually have like a complete, like different sets of wardrobes for each of those. It doesn't really change that much in California from season to season. You can really just kind of get by with like throwing on an extra layer in winter. So like you could wear sandals all year round. But that's an interesting question though. Yeah, I don't know. I've got some folks saying pretty sure it's summer or fall. So that could be. I'm not sure. If anybody in the chat does find out, let us know. Christian Williams says, is it common for lawyers to withhold some stuff in court? Well, you are going to try to bring in the evidence that is most beneficial to your case, but you also, as you're preparing for what your strategy and what you're going to do in trial, you're also going to take into consideration, or you should take into consideration, what the other side is going to push back on. And so what kind of fights are worth having? What kind of fights are not worth having? If you figure, you know, I am going to try to get in this bit of this, you know, the summary of this interview, right? Like with this witness, for example, is the context in which this question came up is, you know, like if I know that I want to bring in this sentence right here from this witness's interview with the defense attorneys, and these are the defense notes of that interview. I want this little sentence in. I know that the other side is going to argue for context, that they will say that I'm taking it out of context by only reading that sentence. The question is it worth reading this one sentence in? Because at some point they are going to get these other sentences around in for context, because it is kind of necessary. Looking at it objectively, it is kind of necessary, you know, for the jury to adequately understand. I'm going to try to argue that it's not, but realistically, like lawyers on either side, they'll know, like objectively, like this is probably what the judge is going to be thinking. You have to be able to think that way in order to do your job properly, because that way you can adequately prepare your arguments and strategy. So anyway, so you're likely going to be doing that calculation behind the scenes in preparation for a trial to say like, okay, I'm going to do this. Defense is going to say that. They're going to object. What's the judge going to say? Is it worthwhile to do all of this in front of the jury and make them think that I'm trying to hold this out? Like all of these bits and pieces are factors for your calculation for what you are going to do and what you're going to try to put into trial, or, you know, get into trial, keep out of trial, and all of that. So there definitely is strategy in what you are trying to present to the jury. And that includes cutting out stuff that's not beneficial for your case. But a good lawyer is going to really try to think of all angles with that. I hope that explains the answer. And also I hope that explains I hope that gives an explanation for you. Anyway, Christian Williams says, also a question for those who stream trials. If it's filmed, is anyone planning to stream the Kohlberger one? Yes, 100%. I haven't talked with other people in LawTube about that case specifically, but I'm seeing a lot of people interested in that case. if it's live streamed, I will be live streaming it. Like it's a big one that has been talked about for quite a bit, even though I haven't made any content on it, but I have been following it a little bit on the sides. If it is live streamed, I'm probably going to come out with like a sort of a primer on that case before the trial actually happens. At least that would be my goal. And then would plan to live stream that one gavel to gavel, because that one is very, very, very interesting. And I'm certain that Emily D. Baker would be doing it. Other people would probably also want to be live streaming it. So, okay. And I think, okay. Yeah. Okay. I think that's all the questions. All right. Let's continue on, because now we're going to get into our next witness.
Meredith Krugman Geisler, Geisler.
Mrs. Geisler, do you know Lyle and Erik Menendez?
Yes,
And how is it that you know them?
I was their lifeguard at Beatonsbrook Country Club in Skillman, New Jersey, the summers of 1980 and 1981.
And if they were born in 68 and 70 respectively, that would have made them 9 and 10 and 12 and 13 on those summers. Does that sound about right?
Yes, it does.
And where were you a lifeguard?
I was a lifeguard at Beatonsbrook Country Club, which was in Skillman, New Jersey.
I do really like her outfit.
And what type of a country club is this?
That blue
Is it
jacket and
fairly
everything?
small
I
where
like
you
it.
know everybody, or a huge group?
No, it was a, I don't know the numbers of members, but it was, I would say, a relatively small club, but a club that you got to know most of the families and the children that came to the pool every day.
Okay.
And did most of the people seem to come from the immediate area, and the kids went to the same schools?
Yeah, I would say that it's in the Princeton area, so most of the families were from Skillman, Princeton, Hopewell, and that general vicinity, and all the schools in those areas drew from basically the same communities.
And during the 2 summers that you were working there as a lifeguard, did you actually get to know Lyle and get to know Erik?
I can't say that I developed a really strong relationship with either Lyle or Erik. I know I was a swim coach as well, and Erik was on the swim team, so I spent a little bit more time with Erik than I did with Lyle.
Was this the first time you had ever coached, or did you coach before?
I had coached at other clubs in other cities prior to Beatonsbrook.
And had you been a lifeguard before?
Yeah, I had been a lifeguard for several previous summers.
And did you swim competitively yourself?
Yeah, I swam competitively from age 8 through college.
When you would see Lyle and Erik Menendez, would they be there together, or would they come individually?
Mrs. Menendez would drop them off pretty much every day. At the same time, the pool would open about 10 o'clock, and Mrs. Menendez would be there with the 2 children at 10:01, dropping them off basically every single day.
And did she stay with them?
No, she would drop them off and really didn't see her again until the end of the day, when the pool would close about 7 o'clock.
Was this unusual at that pool?
Yeah, I would say it was relatively unusual. It was a club where the families kind of hung out together, and if it was not if the mother was a non-working mother, then typically the mother would come and spend time at the pool with the children, or play tennis with the kids, or play golf with the kids. It was a multi-purpose club, so it was atypical that a mother would drop the children off and be gone for the entire day.
And would she come back on some occasions and check on them?
Not that I recall.
Yikes.
When the boys were at the pool, did they seem to know a lot of the other families and hang out with some other families they were close to?
Not really. It was typically at a pool, there are various
Tracking Girl
cliques.
agreed.
There, a group of
But
kids will hang out
Interesting
together.
to hear
and
the term.
if somebody's not in that clique, then there's another clique that a group of kids will hang out together, and neither Erik nor Lyle were in any of the cliques at the pool. Again, Erik was at the pool, I remember, a lot more frequently than Lyle, and Erik seemed to be by himself most of the time at the pool.
Did their experience at the pool appear to be different from the other children you observed?
Yes.
In what way?
Well, the fact that they didn't have very many friends or any friends that I remember at the pool with them was very atypical of that club. Again, it was a club where the kids went to elementary schools together and junior highs together and high schools together. And so the fact that here were two kids from the area that went to the same school as the rest of the members and didn't have any friends was atypical.
And was their behavior or their experience unusual enough that it was commented upon?
Yeah.
Calls for hearsay.
Not what they said, Your Honor, just that it was discussed.
Overall.
Yes, in fact.
You've answered the question.
I can, okay.
No, you've answered the
no.
question.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay.
Now, when you say they were dropped off virtually every day, would there be some days that there was bad weather?
Yes, in fact, it was the fact that they were dropped off virtually every day that I lifeguarded, and I was there 7 days a week, and they would be dropped off rain, shine, thunderstorm, inclement weather. It didn't matter. Basically, right after the pool opened, they would be dropped off, and oftentimes the pool would be closed until the thunderstorms went away, and they typically would be hanging out in the cabana waiting for Mrs. Menendez to pick them up, and it usually wasn't right away, whereas most other mothers, if they had dropped off their children, would be there right away to pick up the kids.
Did this happen just on one occasion or on more than one occasion?
It happened on more than one occasion because there were multiple thunderstorms during the summers in that part of New Jersey.
Now, on the days when they were there, would Lyle and Erik be together or would Lyle be somewhere else?
Well, most often, again, Erik would be at the pool for the most part. I remember Lyle being up at the tennis court for the most part, and the tennis court was about 50 yards, I'd say, up a hill from the pool. Definitely within earshot distance, but not at the pool itself. But Erik, when Lyle would be done at the tennis court, I remember him coming down to the pool and taking a dip here and there.
And would Erik be there by himself then during these periods of time?
Yes, he would be.
And when Lyle was up on the tennis court, would he be up there for an hour or two at a time?
It seemed that he was up there for much longer periods of time than just an hour. He would be up there literally, from my recollection, would be up there for hours and hours at a time. And again, that was, I thought, pretty atypical because of the weather and the humidity in New Jersey. It was probably 90 degrees and close to that in humidity very often. And to be up at the tennis court that long was, I thought, odd.
And would he be up at the tennis court with one of his parents or with a coach or what?
I think he was up there with a coach. I remember hearing, again, it wasn't right at the vicinity, but it was enough that you could hear activity going on. And I remember hearing dialogue between Lyle and a coach or an instructor. I don't know if it was a coach, but the tennis pro at the time.
And would there be times when his father would show up and play tennis with him?
Yeah, I do recall Mr. Menendez being up there and Lyle hitting ball after ball after ball after ball for, again, I don't know the exact length of time because I never really clocked it, but it seemed to be an extraordinary amount of time with Mr. Menendez asking him to, hit harder, hit further, hit stronger, hit, whatever. I mean, just hit, and ball after ball after ball.
And did you hear things like good shot or nice work or any sort of positive comments during that?
Not to my recollection, no.
And was Erik on the swim team?
Erik was on the swim team.
And you were the coach?
I was one of 3 coaches.
And how often did the swim team practice?
We had practice every afternoon. I I think it was about 4:30 to 5:30 or so every afternoon, Monday through Friday.
And were there swimming meets?
There were swimming meets about, I'd say, once to twice a week. I don't remember the entire schedule, but there were meets on a weekly basis.
And when you had the swimming practice, how long would that last?
Swimming practice would last about 45 minutes to an hour.
Were the kids tired after it?
Yeah, typically we had kids anywhere from age 8 to age probably 13, 14, and it was a pretty strenuous workout. I mean, we were getting them to do probably 1,000 plus 1,500 yards at a time. And that was a pretty strenuous workout.
And would there be times after this workout when Mr. Menendez would show up?
Yes, Mr. Menendez would sometimes pick the boys up after he'd get home from work, and he would jump into the pool after the swim practice was over because the pool was closed for general swim at that hour. And he would get in the pool to swim laps and would ask Erik to swim laps with him. And this would be right after a practice.
Okay, now, would he ask Erik or
Get in the pool and swim laps with me?
Did Erik look happy about this?
No, I couldn't say he looked happy. He was relatively exhausted from a swim practice, and then he had to go in and swim more laps. It was nothing that I don't think he ever looked forward to.
And how long would the session with his father be?
Well, the pool closed at 7, so I would say if practice was 4:30 to 5:30, Mr. Menendez would pick them up maybe around 6, and it would last for about a half an hour or so.
And do you remember seeing Mr. Menendez at meets in
Yes.
which Erik was swimming?
Yes, I did. Both Mr. and Mrs. Menendez would attend the meets. Mrs. Menendez, we would need volunteers from the members to be officials, to act as officials at the meet. So Mrs. Menendez would be an official, a timer, a judge of some kind, and Mr. Menendez would be there to watch.
And was Erik a good swimmer?
Erik was a very good swimmer. He was a naturally gifted swimmer.
And did he try hard?
Yeah, he always tried hard. He was very polite, very hardworking in practice, always listened to the coaches, and was a very good and hardworking swimmer.
When he would swim in these meets, would you see his father do something that struck you as unusual?
Yes, unusual enough that it was remarked upon by the other coaches.
Objection sustained. The answer is stricken as non-responsive after yes.
Okay. And what would you see Mr. Menendez do, which you thought was unusual?
Mr. Menendez would be, when Erik would be swimming in a race, he would be running up and down the length of the pool, basically yelling at Erik, who was a breaststroker, to swim harder, and not in a very positive, reinforcing way, but more in a, you're not swimming fast enough way.
Now, you commented he was a breaststroker. What's the significance of that?
Well, every stroke you come up for a breath. So every time Erik would come up for a breath, he would hear his father yelling harder, or whatever. I mean, it was whatever his comment was at the moment, but it would be for the length of 25 yards or 50 yards. Every time Erik would come up for a breath, he would see Mr. Menendez running up and down the length of the pool, which was, again, no other parents would be doing that.
Now, you've heard parents cheering their kids on. Is that correct?
Yes.
Was this what that behavior was all about, or was it something different?
It was different than the kids I had coached before and lifeguarded before. It was much more atypical of this caliber of swimming, of competitive swimming. This was a summer league, summer recreation club, and they were in a summer league competitive swimming situation, and it wasn't by far the most competitive swimming one could participate in. There's much more competitive swimming out there, and to be that
Sustained. Ask your next question.
Since it wasn't that competitive, did that make the behavior even more unusual?
Yes, because this was really for fun. It wasn't, there were medals and ribbons awarded to the swimmers, but typically it was just a fun atmosphere. It should have been a fun atmosphere for the kids that were participating in it.
What would happen to Erik when he got to the end of his lane at the end of the race?
Mr. Menendez would usually be waiting for him at the end of his lane, and Erik, I recall, was pretty lanky and skinny young boy, and Mr. Menendez would basically pull him up with his thumbs in Erik's armpits and take him out of the water, and if he didn't like Erik's performance, he would not really aggressively, but kind of take him out and shake him and say, you didn't swim fast enough, you should be swimming harder. And I have vivid memories of that.
Would he do that even when Erik won sometimes?
Yeah, I mean, he would do it win, lose, or draw. I mean, yeah, he did that.
Do you ever see any other parents lift their children out of the water like that?
No, I would see parents kind of bring them out and hug the kids, whether they came in dead last or won the race. I'd see other parents hug and say, great race and way to go. And if they didn't win the race, you'll get them next time. And
Okay, you've answered the question.
And did you ever see Mr. Menendez comfort Erik or congratulate him or say anything positive to him?
no, it was more humiliation in front of his competitors and teammates.
And how did Erik look when this happened?
Very sad, very sad. And, he would typically just kind of walk away and be very sad about his father's, his father's way.
And was Mrs. Menendez around at the time?
She would be officiating and she would have an opportunity to go over there and say good race, but she never did. She was on to her next job at the pool or whatever. She was never there to comfort Erik after Mr. Menendez was tongue lashing him.
Would she ever interfere and try to tell Mr. Menendez that it's not the way to treat the boy?
No, she just pretty much echoed whatever Mr. Menendez would do. I never saw her support Erik at all.
And was this something that happened more than once?
Yeah, it pretty much happened at every meet with every race.
Did you see any sort of affection from either parent?
Never.
No, I did not.
And did you, after Erik was lifted out of this water and out of the water and dressed down like this, would Mr. Menendez give him a little pat, something like that?
He would, after he dressed him down, as you said, he would kind of go, and that's it. I mean, I never really saw anything. No, I never saw hugs or any kind of warmth. I would just say kind of a pat, and then Erik would go to his towel and wait for his next race.
All right, the objection's overruled. She's finished the answer. When you said pat, you were patting your shoulder.
Pat, yeah, pat the shoulder.
Were there parents that you got to know who were taking their children there either for the swim team or just for recreation?
Yeah, I mean,
Irrelevant.
It's foundational, Your Honor, if I may.
Overruled. Your answer is yes?
yes, there were.
And in families like that, if you saw the parents doing something destructive, would you have commented on it?
Objection irrelevant.
Sustained.
Did you ever comment to Mr. Menendez or Mrs. Menendez about their behavior?
No, I didn't feel like I was in a position to do that because I was
All right, you've answered the question. You said no.
Why?
because I was a paid employee of the club and the Menendez were members of the club and they, in a sense, were paying my salary for the summer.
How old were you at the time?
I was 20 and 21.
How many kids do you think that in the course of your coaching and lifeguarding you got to see interact with their parents?
Objection irrelevant.
Overall.
Hundreds and hundreds and hundreds. I mean, look, 400, 500.
Did you ever see any other parents behave in the way that the Menendez parents did?
No, I did not.
Have you seen Lyle and Erik Menendez since 1981?
No, I have not.
Have you had any contact with them?
No, I have not.
Thank you. From observing Erik around the pool and in the swimming, could you describe his personality, what his behavior was like?
He was lonely. He was the sad, introverted, insecure boy.
This is speculation, Your Honor.
He was the sad.
Wait, hold on a second.
Sorry.
Objection sustained. The answer is stricken. You can break it down if you like.
Okay. What did he look like when he was around the pool? Would he be by himself?
He would be by himself.
And how did he look?
Sad. Lonely.
Objection, this is speculation. Your Honor.
All right, the objection is overruled. As far as the description sad, as far as lonely, that's stricken as a conclusion.
Okay. So he looked sad and he was alone all the time? Is that correct?
Yes, he was.
Did he appear to be shy to you?
Objection is also speculation.
Overruled.
Yes, he was shy.
Thank you. I have nothing further.
All right, any other questions on behalf of Erik Menendez?
No, Your Honor. Ms. Lancer did
All right.
examination.
Cross-examination?
Thank you, Your Honor.
It's interesting how the judge is getting impatient with her, but I think that's just because she has been a little long-winded with some of her answers, which is fine. You know, she wants to explain, she wants to give context, she wants to, you know, like really tell the story. But the judge is, you know, he is reminding her from time to time, like, you've answered the question, that's enough, move on. Sometimes it seems like he might be cutting her off where it's like, yeah, but there's still more that she can say. It's a judgment call. But anyway, but it is interesting to see how he's like, all right, let's get moving. So now we're on cross. We'll see how she holds
Geisler?
up on this.
You indicated in direct examination that you were asked a question whether Kitty Menendez, the mother, would ever check on them during the day, and you stated you do not recall that. Is that correct?
Correct.
Do you recall making a statement to the defense attorneys in this case on June 14th, 1993? Do you recall that?
I'm sorry, I didn't understand your
Do you
question.
recall?
Wasn't to us. Wasn't our.
Do you recall making a statement to somebody with the defense team on June 14th, 1993?
I was interviewed by a investigator, yes, but I don't know that was the date.
And didn't you state that Kitty would come by during the day to check on the boys?
I don't recall making that statement. I do not
Would it
recall.
refresh your recollection to take a look at this report?
Sure.
Okay. Directed to page 2 of this report, dated 6/14/93, statement of Meredith Geisler.
Uh-huh.
I'm asking you to take a look at this highlighted section.
Okay. I guess I did say
Does
that.
that refresh your present recollection?
Yeah.
Okay, so Kitty Menendez checked on her sons during the day.
Objection.
Overruled.
Very infrequently.
But you recall now?
Very infrequently.
Okay. Now, you were talking about swim meets 1 or 2 times a week? Is that correct?
1 to 2 swim meets a week. Yes.
And both parents would be there?
Yes.
And Mrs. Menendez would be an official?
Yes.
And Mr. Menendez, would it be fair to say, was very enthusiastic about his son swimming?
Objection. Calls for conclusion.
Sustained.
Would he appear to be excited about his son as his son was swimming?
Objection. Calls for conclusion.
Sustained.
You've indicated that Mr. Menendez would run up and down the sidelines and exhort him to, Erik Menendez, to swim faster. Is that correct?
Yes, he would.
When Erik Menendez first came to you in 1980, 1981,
She does look
He
like,
was
what's her
already a good
name
swimmer,
from Dirty
wasn't he?
Dancing?
Yes, he was.
did
She
you know
does.
that his father had worked with him in swimming?
Objection, Your Honor. Assumes the fact not known.
Overruled.
You can answer, man.
No, I did not.
In fact, Mr. Menendez, you said that Mrs. Menendez would drop the defendants off in the morning and come to pick them up at 7 o'clock, correct?
Basically, when the pool would close.
Isn't it true that Jose Menendez would come to the club straight from work and he would swim
Not every day. It was
quite often?
on occasion, yes.
And he would come straight to work and he would swim laps.
Yes, he would.
And he'd swim with Erik Menendez, correct?
Yes, he would.
Now, Jose and Kitty Menendez took the swimming pretty seriously. Would that be fair to say?
Objection calls for conclusion.
Sustained.
You had indicated that Erik Menendez was a good breaststroker, is that right?
Yes.
And he was big and strong for his age?
I don't think he was big. He was pretty skinny, if I recall, but
he
he was
strong?
good for his age.
He's really up on this big and strong
And-
thing.
Your Honor, it's the younger person relatively strong as your Honor.
Objection overruled. The answer will stand.
You coached him, correct? And
Yes,
you
I
saw
did.
him.
I was one of 3 coaches. Yes.
Thank you, Debbie.
And,
Jennifer
you
Gray,
would coach
that's
him
the
for
name of the
45 minutes a
actress.
day. Is that right?
Yeah. 5 days a week, not every day.
Would they come there on the weekends too?
Yes, for the most part.
And the family would come on the weekends, or the parents would also be there on the weekends during the day?
Less often than the boys would be there.
Now, you had indicated that you had never seen Mrs. Menendez
Oh, why?
offer any kind of encouragement.
I don't know why it took me this long to like link that up. The whole big and strong thing is to get at, that the boys for a long time have been, they are physically able to defend themselves. They are, strong and all that, big and strong, so this idea that they're afraid of their father, that they're afraid that he's going to come in, they're afraid of their mother, who was a petite little woman, like this idea is basically nonsense, that they would actually be reasonably afraid of their parents. And that would explain, everything leading up to them then killing their parents in essentially self-defense. Okay. Good morning. We have finally arrived.
Encouragement, is that correct? Any kind of
Yes.
support? Is that correct? The question is, did you ever see Mrs. Menendez ever offer Erik Menendez any kind of support, or Lyle Menendez any kind of support?
No, I did not.
Again, yes, it's your pages are unnumbered, but it's the 4th page, and it's the 2nd line. Now, you had indicated,
Fourth page, I'm sorry.
2nd line,
Go ahead.
okay. You indicated that you did see Kitty put her arm around the boys sometimes. Is that correct?
In that interview?
Yeah,
is that
yes.
what if it says that, yes, I did.
Okay, but you testified earlier that you never saw any of that.
It was very, very rare.
Okay.
Very rare.
So when you said that you did see Kitty Menendez put her arm around the boys sometimes, that you saw that,
Very rarely.
all right?
Kit Kat, welcome back to Bike Club. Happy to have you here as always. I'll see you on Friday.
And you indicated that Mr. Menendez would sometimes pat his son on the shoulder after a meet.
Mm-hmm.
Is that yes?
Yes.
In fact, Erik Menendez sometimes won his meets. Like he came in first.
Yes,
He
he
got a
would.
medal. Is that right?
I think we gave out ribbons, but
Ribbons?
yes. Hmm.
And did his parents appear to be proud that he had won these medals?
Objection, Your Honor. Calls for conclusion.
Sustained.
No further questions.
All right, any redirect?
And I think that's going to be it.
All right, thank you. You may step down. You're excused.
Okay, so we are going to go on to the next witness. It is in the next portion. Okay. All right. So interesting. Very interesting testimony. And I don't know that, so here's where the cross-examination was effective. We did hear the big and strong we heard that this big and strong phrase kind of repeated today a couple times, and it's enough that it's noticeable, right? So you can tell that the prosecution is trying to get this idea that the Menendez boys were big and strong. They were big and strong. They were big and strong. And the idea behind that, I think at this point, is to say that the boys growing up were they were tough, they were strong, they could push back, they could fight back. And so how reasonable is it for them to say that they were afraid of their parents, their petite little mom, and their dad who was I don't know exactly how tall their dad was, but anyway, but it's like, they're young also, like around 18, 21 years old. That's also like almost peak, not necessarily peak strength, because I feel like young men can get stronger into their 20s and 30s, but like that's still, like, you compare that to their parents and their parents' physical abilities, maybe there could be a situation where they are much stronger than their parents. But how effective is that? How effective would that have been in the 1990s versus today? That's another question. Also, Kit Kat, thank you so much for gifting 5 Legalbytes memberships. Very, very kind of you. If my screen will not flash and go away on me, that would be helpful. Linda Starner, Earthworm 2 UK, Disney Nerd 85, Holly M, and Gina D. You have all been gifted memberships by Kit Kat. So welcome to Bite Club, or welcome back to Bite Club. I know some of you. And hope to see you guys on Friday. And thanks so much, Kit Kat. Thank you. You are, it's so generous. So thank you. Okay. Let's continue on. So now we've got Marianne Cano, one of the cousins. I think Andrew Cano is her brother, who was very close with Erik. He's the one to whom Erik wrote that letter that people have recently been talking about, that was not brought into trial. So this could be very, very interesting. Maybe let's talk trigger warning, because I would venture to guess, based on how much time the Canos spent, from what I have heard about Andrew spending a lot of time with Erik, that she probably has been around for a lot. She probably has seen a lot of the Menendez family. So, we're probably going to get into various forms of abuse. So if that is difficult for you, if that is tough for you, if that is a particular trigger for you, and you are feeling yourself emotionally responding to it, take a step back, take a break, do whatever you need, walk outside, get a cup of coffee, a glass of water, do whatever you need, go down to the border, get out of the country, and, come back 5 years later. I'm kidding. But like, you know what I mean? Do whatever you need to take care of yourself, because that is most important. This is not worth that. Okay. Let's get into it now. Come on, screen. It keeps going out on me, this screen. I have my second screen here where I've got this stuff on the side, so I can have multiple windows open. And for some reason today, it has decided to start getting real wonky, and it's not a very old screen at this point. Okay. Anyway.
Yes.
Are you related to?
Sorry. Let me go. I think I did not exactly start at the beginning. Here we go.
My name is Marianne, Cano, Cano.
Ms. Cano, would you sit back in the chair?
Is that too loud?
And try to keep this, okay?
Yes, yes,
Are you related to Lyle and Erik Menendez?
yes, I am.
And what is your relationship to them?
I'm first cousin.
And who are your parents?
Marta Cano and Peter Cano.
If you look to your right, Ms. Connor, you'll see we have a family tree chart. Can you see what's written on it?
Yes,
And do you see your parents' names?
yes,
And do you see yourself?
yes,
And are you here?
correct.
So you're the third child of Marta and Peter Connor.
That's correct.
And what's your date of birth, Ms. Connor?
3964.
So that would make you 4 years older than Lyle and 7 years older than Erik. Is that right?
Yes,
Now, when you were a young child, where did your parents live?
in Puerto Rico.
And at some point, did your family move to New Jersey, the Princeton area?
Yes,
And what year was that?
1979.
And when your family moved to the Princeton area in 1979, were you then living relatively close to Erik and Lyle?
Yes, we were.
Before your family moved to Princeton in 1979, had you seen Erik and Lyle periodically over the years?
Yes,
Did you get to see more of them after the family moved to New Jersey?
yes.
On what sorts of occasions would you get to see Erik and Lyle?
Objection, Vegas to win.
When you moved to New Jersey? After you moved to New Jersey?
Family gatherings, Christmas, Thanksgiving, birthdays, Mother's Day, Father's Days. We pretty much had a reunion for every occasion, really.
Okay.
You have to speak up a little bit. Just
Can this
Move
go
back
up?
from the mic.
We'll move
Speak
that
up.
microphone.
Yeah, it's a little bit too low for me.
Okay,
That's
This
better.
witness is very soft-spoken.
just
Your Honor.
speak up if you can.
Is that better?
Yeah, that's better. That's better. So it would be for all sorts of holidays and birthdays and Mother's Day and Father's Day.
Yes.
And what would be the usual gathering place for the family?
It was at my Aunt Terry's house, usually.
And that's Terry and Carlos Baralt.
Yes.
And Terry Baralt is your mother's sister.
Yes.
And did Terry and Carlos Baralt have children as well?
Yes.
And they had 4 girls?
Yes.
Yes?
Yes.
So you would ordinarily the family would gather at their home?
Yes.
And did Jose and Kitty Menendez and their 2 boys join these family gatherings?
Yes, they did.
Now, I want to focus your attention on that period of time from 1979 to 1982, okay? In 1982, did you start college?
Yes, I did.
And so were you away from the family more?
Yes, I was.
So let's focus to that period before you started college. When you would see the Menendez family, Jose and Kitty and their 2 boys at these family gatherings, okay? Can you first tell us what your impression was, what you saw by way of interaction between Jose and Kitty?
Objection, irrelevant.
Be more specific as to what you're asking.
Okay. Did you see the way Jose and Kitty treated each other, talked to each other, acted towards each other at these gatherings when their children were present?
Yes.
And could you describe what you saw?
It was very impersonal. There was very little display of affection between them in a way that they did not appear to be a couple to me.
And was that different from what you were seeing with the other members of the family, the other married couples?
Yes.
Now, at this time, were your parents separated?
Yes, they were.
But before their separation, did your parents act more like a couple than what you saw with Jose and Kitty?
Objection, irrelevant, calls for speculation.
Sustain.
Now, when the boys, Erik and Lyle,
Got the
when
thought
you
in front
saw
of the jury,
them
though.
at these family gatherings between 1979 and 1982, did they behave differently than the other children of the family?
Objection, irrelevant.
Yes.
Objection sustained. The answer is stricken.
Well, Your Honor, that was just foundational to
Well,
their
let's
behavior.
get to it then.
Okay. How did Lyle and Erik behave at these family gatherings at your Aunt Terry's house?
Objection irrelevant.
Overruled.
They were very undisciplined to my eyes, wild, hyperactive.
Okay, describe what they did.
They would run around all the time.
Always running,
Yes,
always in motion.
yes.
Now, were they aggressive towards people at all?
No,
Did they ever spit or bite or hit or punch or do any of those things?
no,
Were they ever fresh or talk back to people at all?
no,
So they just moved all the time?
yes.
Now, were there occasional family gatherings at their house?
Not at the time,
Not during those years?
not during those years.
And would it be fair to say then the only time you really observed their behavior was when they're at someone else's house?
Yes.
Now, did anybody, strike that, did either of their parents ever say anything to them about their running around behavior?
Occasionally my uncle would.
And when your uncle would say something about it, what did the boys do?
They would stop.
And would it take any arguments or any repetition on his part for them to stop?
No, it didn't.
Tell me how it would happen.
Objection irrelevant.
Overruled.
That's relevant.
Well, they would be running around and for a long time before somebody would respond, and eventually my uncle would either just raise his hand or just call their name, and they would stop what they were doing immediately. Yeah.
And by your uncle, you do mean their father, Jose Menendez.
Yes, correct.
Did other people in the family try to stop their running around?
Well, we did sometimes.
We being who?
The cousins,
The older cousins?
the girl, we're all female cousins for the most part. We'd be trying to play cards or whatever we were doing. We would try to get them to calm down.
Okay. And did they calm down when you talked to them?
No,
And did you ever see your Aunt Kitty trying to calm them down or stop them?
I did not.
Did you ever see any other adult in the family try to say something to them and have your Uncle Jose stop the adult?
Yes.
What did you see in that regard?
Well, occasionally one of either my Aunt Terry usually was the one who would say something to them, and my uncle would say, let them be. They need to, they need to be boys. You don't know.
They need to be boys, he said.
Right.
And would the other adults and some of the other cousins complain to Jose and Kitty about the boys' hyperactive behavior?
Objection irrelevant.
It's foundational, Your Honor.
Objection sustained.
Well, did you ever? How would your Uncle Jose respond if any of the other adults or any of the cousins complained about the fact that his boys were running through the house?
Objection irrelevant.
Sustained.
Did he laugh at this behavior? Did you see your uncle laugh at this behavior of the boys?
He seemed to feel it was normal behavior for them and just thought it was funny most of the time. Yes.
Were you able to get to know Lyle or Erik during these years, 79 to 82?
No.
Why?
Objection irrelevant.
Sustained.
Well, I'd like to be heard, Your Honor. Well, I'll rephrase it another way. Did you get to be close to them at all? To be
No.
friendly with them, to be able to talk to them, to have a relationship with them, to show them affection, any of those things during these years?
Overruled.
It was very hard to get to know my cousins. It was,
All right, the question is, did you or did you not get to know them in the context of the question that was asked?
I did not get to know them in any of those
Ways?
ways.
Why?
Objection irrelevant.
Sustained.
Your Honor, I'd like to be heard on this.
Yeah. I
Did you see if any of the other girl cousins like yourself had any greater success in approaching or getting to know the boys?
No,
Objection irrelevant.
You didn't see it or they
What is your
didn't?
answer?
no.
What do you mean by that?
I did not see any of my
She's just
other
blowing past
female
the
cousins
objection.
get to know my cousins any better.
Okay. Now, do you have a younger brother named Andy?
Yes.
At some point, did it appear that Erik and Andy had formed a friendship?
During what time period?
Well, I'm not specifying, but was there a time period when that did happen?
Yes.
And do you recall what time period that was?
It was after I was in college.
Okay. Now, after you went to college, did you still join in some of the family gatherings?
Yes, I did.
Was that slightly less frequently than before?
Yes, it was.
And during that period of time, 1982 to 1986, did you again observe Erik and Lyle at these gatherings?
Yes.
And was there any change in their behavior during that period?
Yes, there was.
Would you tell us what they were like during that later period of time, 82 to 86?
They were,
Were they different from each other during this period also?
yes, they were different from each other also.
Okay. Then why don't you first describe how Lyle behaved at these family gatherings from 82 through 86?
Lyle was the more social. He would, we could actually converse with him for the first time, really. I had never really had a conversation with either one of them. So Lyle would actually ask me how school was, how my athletics were, could actually converse with him.
He showed an interest in what you were doing?
Yes, he did.
I take it he wasn't running around the house anymore?
No, he wasn't running around the house anymore.
Okay. Was he well-mannered, civil, polite?
Yes, he was.
And what about Erik? What was Erik like at these family gatherings from 82 through 86?
Erik was still very difficult to hug. They were both difficult to hug throughout, but at this time, Lyle was, in Latin families, we tend to say hello with a hug and a kiss on the cheek, and it was, with Erik, it was very difficult. It seemed like he had a hard time receiving affection.
Did he have a hard time receiving physical touching? Did you notice that?
Yeah.
When they were younger, during the 79 through 82 period, did you also notice that both of them would pull away from hugs?
Yes.
Did both of them at that time seem to be having difficulty receiving affection?
Yes.
Objection sustained. The answer is stricken.
Tell us what they did when they were younger when someone tried to hug them.
They would pull away and stay very stiff.
Like cringe?
I don't know what cringe means. They would just stay very stiff and not reciprocate any affection. I mean, it was almost very uncomfortable to even try to hug them because it was a stiff lug which you were hugging.
Okay, they didn't show any hostility. They didn't try to brush you away or anything. They just closed.
They just stayed stiff. It was not received.
And in the later years, you found that Erik still had that reaction to your attempts to hug him?
Yes.
Overruled. The answer will stand.
And what about, as compared to Lyle, who was making social conversation, would Erik do that in the later years?
No, he didn't.
What did he do at these gatherings?
I didn't see him interact very much with anyone. If anyone, it was with my younger brother, Andy.
So that's the only person in the family you saw him interact with?
Yes.
Would you try to talk to Erik, ask him questions, start a conversation?
Overruled.
Yes, I would try. I would try to, but it was clear that after a few monosyllables as answers that I wasn't going to get very far to get to know him.
He was silent?
Yes.
Was he being hostile or unfriendly or just silent?
Quiet. Reserved.
Now, during these later years, 82 through 86, when you'd be at these family gatherings, was the attendance of the Menendez family, Jose and Kitty and the two boys, different than what it had been in the earlier period?
Yes.
And would you tell us what was different?
As a general statement, they tended to be the last ones to arrive, the first ones to leave. And many times, one or the other of my cousins was not present, or one or the other of my aunt and uncle were not present.
So sometimes only one parent would show up and both boys wouldn't be there.
Yes.
And did you know where the boys were, where the other parent was?
Objection, hearsay number one.
Sustained.
And when you say they were the last to show up and the first to leave, did they stay very long at these gatherings during the years 82 to 86?
Objection irrelevant.
Overruled.
It seemed like they would stay least time than anyone else. They would just get there last minute prior to when we would start eating almost and leave as soon as we were done. So it was in and out.
So there was no time to socialize or to get to know them?
Correct.
Wow.
And how would the departures from these family gatherings come about?
Objection irrelevant.
Was there some member of the family who would decide it was time to leave and
Probably
signal
Jose.
the rest?
Yes.
And who was that?
It
Jose.
was my uncle.
You have to use his name. You have a number of uncles that are at these gatherings.
It was Uncle Jose.
And what would he do?
Objection irrelevant.
Overruled.
He would either snap his fingers.
Whoa.
Okay, Lyle, Erik, Kitty, let's go. I mean, that was it.
That was it.
Whoa. Whoa, whoa, whoa.
Now, in 1986, that spring or early summer, did your mother and the rest of your family move to Florida?
Yes, some members of my family.
And did you remain in the Princeton area for that summer?
Yes, I did.
And where did you live starting in June of 1986?
I lived with my aunt and uncle, Kitty and Jose, and Erik and Lyle.
Oh.
And at that time, let me get the house straight.
Uh-oh. We are probably going to get some
At that time, what house were they living in?
spicy
They were living
testimony.
in the Princeton house.
The one on Mountain Avenue?
Yes.
This probably won't work for very long, but that's this house here.
Yes.
Correct. Is that a large house?
Very large.
And what was the physical setting of it? How did you get to that house from the street, say?
There was a gate, but not a guard gate, a gate that you would unlock yourself. That wasn't locked. You would just lift the handle and go in and get back in your car, and you drove about a quarter of a mile or so. It was a long ways from the street.
It was a private road?
Yes,
It just led to that house?
only to the house.
And what was the physical setting along that road? Was it open space, field, or was it wood?
It was woods. It was kind of scary. It's
Scary?
to me, it was.
And
Okay.
so you drove a quarter of a mile, and then you got to this house, which was all by itself in the woods.
Hmm. Yes, yes, yes. Sorry.
And when you stayed at that house, was this the first time that you had ever stayed with Jose and Kitty Menendez and their children?
Yes, it was the first time.
Now, were you able, when you were living with them, how long did you stay there?
I stayed from about the end of June through August, mid-August or so.
And originally, had you planned to stay longer?
Yes, I had.
And did you leave early?
Yes,
Why did you leave early?
I was very uncomfortable in the house.
Were you uncomfortable with the house, or were you uncomfortable with the people in the house?
I was uncomfortable all around with the house and with my feelings of the people in the house.
Now, while you were living in the house, you have described before that at family gatherings you'd see Jose and Kitty Menendez, and you saw no affection and no interaction. Did you see anything different when you were living?
I saw no affection between any family members.
And how did Jose treat Kitty in front of his children that you observed while you were living with him?
I saw a lot of mocking and making fun of Kitty.
Was this good-natured, lighthearted, mocking and making fun? Or was it something else?
I don't know what you mean by
Well, was it
good-natured.
just joking or was it sarcastic?
Maybe.
Was it hurtful?
It was hurtful. I would see tears in my eyes every so often.
And how often did this mocking behavior by Jose go on?
I saw it constantly.
Every day.
Yes.
Did you see any other way, in fact, of his relating to her other than this mocking, hurtful?
No, I didn't.
Now, you said you saw no affection between any family members. Did you see did you either see or hear anything that sounded like or looked like affection or love from Kitty to either of the boys?
No, I did not.
If you'd back up a little bit from that mic.
Yeah.
I'm hearing you breathing at this point. And concerning Jose and his sons, did you see anything affectionate or warm or supportive from him to his boys?
No.
Did you see anything kind from either of these parents to either of the boys?
Sustained.
Did you see any kindness being displayed?
No.
Do you recall what dinner time was like in that household when Jose was home?
Yes.
And would you describe
Dinner.
when Jose was there and when one or both of the boys were there?
Yes.
Could you describe what the atmosphere at dinner was
Oh
like?
boy.
I found it very almost like a business. It was very impersonal. It was a question answer session, I felt, about at the time it was sports is all I heard.
So there were questions and quizzes about sports.
Yes.
Overall.
Yeah, that's a
Correct.
clarifying question.
And was it, what was the emotional context? I mean, how were people talking to each other? Was it?
There was not much emotion. It was very matter of fact interaction, which was very odd to me.
Was odd to you?
Strike the conclusion that it was very odd.
All right, that portion of the answer is stricken. The rest will remain.
I want to turn your attention
Whatever, jury's still right.
to a particular dinner time conversation involving Jose Menendez and Erik, okay? Do you recall there was a day when Erik lost a tennis match?
Yes.
Let's go back to the tennis match. Were you there?
Yes, I was.
And where was this match held? Do you recall?
It was in a Princeton area court. I don't recall exactly.
And do you know whether this was some major tournament or just some minor match, some routine thing?
It was not a major tournament. I don't know the exact nature of it.
But it was, your understanding was it was just a routine type of tennis match.
Yes.
And who attended the match?
My Aunt Kitty and myself.
And Erik was playing.
Yes.
Lyle wasn't there, nor was he playing in that match.
No.
Would you, well, first of all, tell us, how did Erik play in that match?
Sustained.
Your Honor, this is foundational to the behavior of the parents.
Okay, counsel, just, is it the result of the game? Is that what you're
No.
asking? Did he win
How
or
was he
lose?
doing? And I wanted to talk about what was going on during the match.
Well, to just
I think that's important for context.
ask it another way.
Okay. Did you observe your Aunt Kitty during the match?
Yes.
And what was she doing?
She was watching Erik play.
And how did she look when she was watching Erik play?
Overall.
Erik was not doing very well, and she was getting very uptight and upset.
And how could you tell that she was uptight and upset?
She was, based on what she was saying and how she was responding physically. I mean, she was.
Show us what she was doing physically, if you can, Ms. Cano.
I mean, she would almost. It's hard to describe.
Well, you keep clenching your fists. Was she clenching her fists?
Yes. She
And what
would
else was she
get,
doing?
saying, "Come on, Erik! I can't believe he's losing this match. I can't believe he's losing. I can't believe he's playing so poorly. He should never be beat by this guy." And it was just, she was very upset about how he was playing.
Was she talking in a loud or forceful tone of voice?
She was talking a loud, upset voice next to me.
Okay. Was she saying anything to Erik?
No,
And what was the look on her face? Can you recall?
a frowned, upset look.
And did you see Erik at the end of the match?
Yes, I did.
And was he coming towards where you and your Aunt Kitty were?
He went straight to the car.
And did you see the look on his face?
Yes,
And how did he look?
he looked devastated.
He looked upset also.
Beyond upset.
And did you then all get in the car and go somewhere?
We were driving back home.
And what conversation, if any, what interaction, if any, did you observe between Kitty and Erik in the car?
There was total silence on the entire ride home.
She said nothing to him?
No.
Did you say anything?
I did not feel it was appropriate. I felt very uncomfortable.
Yeah, move to strike the time response.
No.
Objection sustained. The answer is stricken.
Okay.
And what happened once you got home?
Erik went to his room or somewhere. I stayed in the kitchen helping my aunt prepare dinner.
And did she talk any more about the tennis match while you were preparing dinner with her?
No.
Overruled.
And
No.
did-
No,
She didn't talk to
she did not.
And did at some point did Jose come home?
Yes, shortly after.
And did you observe an interaction between Jose and Kitty when he came home?
Yes.
And would you tell us what you saw and heard? This is not offered for the truth, Your Honor, but to explain Mr. Menendez's subsequent behavior.
Uh-oh.
As he walked in the door, the first thing he asked was, "How did Erik do?" And my aunt proceeded to explain to him the different things he had missed in the game. Like he missed several serves, and apparently his backhand was not the greatest that day, and that was what was talked about.
So she basically gave a detailed critique of Erik's performance at the match.
No.
Sustained.
No, that's
And
just,
did she give him details about what had happened to the match?
She gave him details about what happened exactly.
Okay, she didn't just say, well, he lost.
No, she's described in what way he lost.
Did she make any excuses for Erik's performance in talking to Jose?
No.
And what was Jose's response to what Kitty Head was telling him?
He took it very lightly and almost laughed.
He almost laughed. Did he say anything?
I just recall him going, "Figures."
It figures?
oh no.
Now, was there a dinner later that evening with yourself and Jose and Kitty and Erik?
Yes.
And would you tell us what happened during that dinner?
The entire dinner conversation was about Erik's match. And it was directed towards Erik in terms of mocking and saying how he was not playing hard enough, practicing hard enough, and therefore never be good enough.
And who was doing the talking?
My uncle, Jose.
And how long did this criticism go on?
For a long time.
An hour?
I don't recall exactly, but the length of the dinner.
And did Erik eat anything during that dinner?
Erik barely touched his plate.
And did you observe his facial expressions, his demeanor during this talking by his father?
Erik was constantly looking down at his plate, blank look on his face, and when I did finally look at his eyes, he had tears and a look of much pain in his eyes.
Did he say anything back to his father?
No, he did not.
Did he defend himself?
No,
Did he argue?
no,
Did he make excuses?
no.
And what about Kitty? Did she say anything during this dinner?
No.
At some point, did Erik leave the table?
Yes, he did.
And was dinner over at that point, or did he leave while it was still going on?
Dinner was not quite over.
And where did he go?
He went downstairs to the basement.
And at that point, when he first left the table, did you start to get up to go somewhere?
I attempted to get up, yes.
And what were you going to do?
I was concerned about Erik. I was going to go towards Erik.
And did your Uncle Jose at that point do something with respect to you?
Yes.
What did he do?
He just raised his hand, Marianne, and I stopped.
So that gesture with his hand up and calling your name stopped you from leaving to go after Erik?
Yes.
Now, a little while later that evening, did you find Erik?
Yes.
And where was he?
Erik was still downstairs in the basement.
And what happened between you and Erik in the basement? Did you have a conversation with him?
Objection overruled.
Thank you. Did you have a conversation with him?
I snuck down to the basement to see how Erik was doing.
Why did you sneak?
Sustained.
Go ahead.
Just to ask your next question, please.
You went down, you snuck down to the basement to see how he was doing, and what did you do next?
I just put my arm on his shoulder and
Whose shoulder?
Erik's shoulder, and I just said, it must not be fun to be made fun of all the time.
And what was Erik's response?
He, without looking at me, just looking blank into the floor, he just said, "It's all right, I'm used to it."
And was that the end of the conversation?
Yes.
What was he doing when you went down into the basement? When you first saw him there, what was he doing?
He was sitting on a stool, just looking at the floor.
And what was he doing when he told you, "It's all right, I'm used to it"?
He was still sitting on the stool, looking at the floor.
And did you stay with him, or did you leave at that point?
No, I left.
Now, was this episode that you've described, this dinner, was this the first time that you had seen Jose criticizing and making fun of Erik at dinner?
No, it was not the first time.
Was that a frequent occurrence?
Yes.
Now, was this just fun teasing of Erik, or was it harsh criticism?
In my perception, it was harsh.
What aspects of what you saw in their home did you consider harsh treatment? What did you see that you considered harsh treatment?
I don't understand
Okay.
the question.
What you just described is like a criticism and a ridiculing, correct?
Yes.
Were there other things that you saw that you considered harsh?
What I considered harsh is just the overall treatment towards Erik, and the constant mocking, and the fact that he could never do anything right in my eyes.
Well, he couldn't do anything right for you, or you mean what he's being told he could never do anything right?
He was told he could never do anything right. I never saw him being reinforced positively for anything, even when he did do something right.
And he did win things, didn't he?
Yes, he did.
And when he won, he never got any praise for it or any
I never saw that.
Would he sometimes be ridiculed and mocked by his father even when he won because he somehow didn't do it the perfect way that his father wanted him to do it?
Sustained.
Did you ever hear his father mocking or ridiculing him after he had won?
I would see, I wouldn't call it mocking and ridiculing. I would see a correction on something that could have been better.
So
More
he was corrected.
Yes.
Did you know, by the way, during that summer that you were living with the family, that Erik was attending a school for people with learning disabilities?
No, I was not aware of that.
Were you aware of the fact that he was attending school at all that summer?
No.
Was he gone for part of each day?
He left early in the morning, and I thought he was going to a tennis camp all day. And I would go with my aunt sometimes to pick him up from the tennis camp.
And that would be in the afternoon?
Yes.
And I take it neither your aunt nor your uncle ever talked about the fact that Erik had any learning difficulties?
No, they did not.
At family gatherings, would your Aunt Kitty, in front of everyone, including the children, brag about the boys?
Overall.
The conversation in family gatherings that I had observed prior to my living at the Menendez home, my cousin's home, it was always, when it was geared about the boys, it was about which match they had won, who they had beaten, or what current tournament was upcoming in some way.
So her discussion about them was focused on winning.
I would say competition-oriented, event-oriented.
Okay. She never talked about them as people?
Sustained.
In front of you, did she ever just talk about their personal qualities, like he's a good boy, he's a sweet boy, he's a nice boy, he's artistic, he's talented, any of that?
About our athletically gifted, athletically champions in the different tournaments. In that respect, yes.
And only in that respect?
Yes.
And the same is true with respect to her talking about Lyle, I take it?
Yes.
You've described the dinner time conversations as businesslike. Were they tense?
Very tense.
Now, you visited the Menendez family here in California after they moved, did you not?
Yes.
And you spent some time alone with your Aunt Kitty?
Yes.
Alone meaning you had come here with your brother, had you not?
Yes.
And then he left. This is your older brother, Peter?
He's younger than I am.
I'm sorry, your younger brother, Peter.
Yes.
And then the youngest is Andy.
Yes.
He's a younger brother still, right?
Correct.
All right. So you had come here with Peter, and then Peter went off, and you stayed a day with your Aunt Kitty?
Yes, I did.
And what did she do to entertain you that day?
Sustained.
Was Erik with you and your Aunt Kitty that day?
For part of the time.
Okay. What did you do after? Did you pick him up someplace? Is that what happened?
Yes.
After you picked Erik up, what happened?
We went to see the house in Calabasas that was under construction or remodeling in some way.
And did she point certain things out to you in the house?
Yes.
And was there something about her demeanor and the way she was talking that struck you that day?
Yes.
Sustained.
In the present, was this discussion with her and her walking you through the house in Erik's presence?
Yes.
And did
Do you
you,
have a time frame when this was?
this was in 19...
Counsel asked the question. I'll testify.
When was this?
1988 or 87.
Between 1987 and 1988?
Yes.
What time of year was it that you came?
I went in the summertime.
And the Calabasas house was under construction at that time?
Yes.
From what you could see, was this a house that was being remodeled?
Fiction and relevant.
Overall.
I wouldn't know. I know it was under construction, and you could see that it was under construction. There were
Okay.
like wooden beams, and I don't know. I wouldn't know. I'm knowing the difference.
Okay, so you don't know if it was an existing house that was being changed or
No,
brand new
I didn't know.
construction? Okay. During the course then of this time when she's showing you this house, were you struck by anything about the way she was talking about it?
Fiction and relevant.
Sustained.
Were you either when you were in Princeton with your Aunt Kitty or when you were here with her made aware of her use to any extent of drugs or tranquilizers?
Fiction and relevant.
As to the form of the question, the objection is sustained.
Did you know whether or not your Aunt Kitty was taking tranquilizer pills? Let's start with in Princeton when you were staying with the family.
Fiction and relevant.
As to the form of the question, the objection is sustained. Question is, did you see?
Okay, thank you, Your Honor. Did you see her taking pills?
Yes, I did.
Did she also tell you she was taking pills?
Fiction confirmation.
Overall.
She didn't tell me. I was next to her.
Okay, tell us what you saw.
Well, we were in the kitchen, and she took out a bottle that I could read. It said Valium on it. And
Overall.
And so I saw her taking them, and she must have seen a questioning look in my.
All right, you've answered the question.
Did she say something to you after you had seen her take the pills?
She said that that was the way she got through the day.
I want to turn your attention for a moment, Ms. Cano, to the layout of the house in Princeton. When you stayed there that summer, did you stay in a particular room?
I stayed in one of the guest rooms.
And what was the access to that room? Say you come in the front door, how do you get from the entryway to that particular room?
It would be on the right wing of the house.
And was it on the same level as the entry?
You would go up a few steps and then sort of make a right so that my room would be facing the entrance, the driveway into the entrance of the house.
Now, when you go up those few steps to get to that guest room, do those steps only lead to that guest room?
Yes.
So that guest room had its own separate way in and out of it, correct?
Right.
Now, do you know where the master bedroom was located in the house?
It was totally separate from where I was.
Okay, was it to the far right?
It was to the far right, but it had a different walkway leading to that area.
And do you recall that there was a staircase right next to the master bedroom that led upstairs to Erik's room?
Yes.
Did your Aunt Kitty ever hug you?
Fiction and relevant.
Overall.
No.
Did you hug her?
I tried once and it wasn't well received, so I didn't again.
And just to clarify, I originally talked to you about these things, do you recall, on March 11th, 1993.
Yes.
And I showed you the summary that I wrote of our conversation the other night. You recall that?
Yes.
And did you correct one aspect, that when you were staying at this house, it was before the family moved to California, not after?
That's correct.
And when you had indicated that you remember being there for one period of time alone with Lyle, what was the correction that you gave me?
It was prior to the family moving to California, and it was during a trip where Erik had gone away for a match with my aunt and uncle, and I stayed there with only Lyle in the house.
Okay. Okay, thank you. I'm nothing further on.
Any questions on behalf of Lyle Menendez? Cross-examination.
Okay. And actually, real quick before we do that, there's a couple questions here that came up about the judge. Draco Amy says, do judges normally get this involved in the case? He seems to be leading the attorneys. And then Christian Williams says, why is the judge like this with the defense witnesses, but not with the prosecution ones? So it could be, I mean, judges are people too. And so they're also subject to very human tendencies. It could very well be that he started off in this trial with a lot more patience, and that things that he feels that things are dragging on a little bit. And so maybe he's wanting to push things kind of forwards, which means that he'll jump in and kind of intervene a little bit and, say, okay, you've answered the question, ask your next question, do things like that. It could be, or maybe he's biased in favor of the prosecution. That is also possible. At this point, I don't know, because he is also sustaining a lot of objections from the defense, and and overruling a lot of objections for the prosecution. So I can't say that I would conclude that he's overwhelmingly biased in any way, but yeah, I mean, it is detectable that he is becoming more and more kind of impatient with some of these witnesses, and kind of right off the bat. It definitely can give the appearance of bias for sure. But I don't know. It could also very well be just that this is a long trial and things are going longer than he had anticipated this trial to go. And so he has an interest in moving it along, because remember, judges we are looking at one trial. He is looking at, this is one trial among many. He's got, even outside of this trial going on at this moment, he's got other cases that are developing, that he's got hearings that he has to show up for, and all kinds of, decisions that are being made in other cases, and, fights that are happening in discovery that sometimes he might have to rule on, like things like that happen throughout the pre-trial litigation that he still has to sort of manage. He's got a docket to manage, right? So it could very well be that he's looking at the entirety of his docket and being like, this trial is going to end up taking way longer than what we had all budgeted for, and so we've got to get this moving. So that could also be part of it. Okay, let's continue on. Hey, Kurt, good to see you in the chat.
Ms. Cano, regarding this thing you've just testified to about when you stayed with Lyle, that was while the family was still living in Princeton, is that correct?
Yes.
And that was during the summer of 1986?
And also, yeah, your everyday sheep. He's a former prosecutor. That is also very common. Judges tend to be taken from prosecutors as opposed to public defender's office or defense attorneys more often than not. So that is a common thing. Make of that what you will. It is possible to have had experience as a prosecutor and still be an unbiased judge. I mean, look at Emily D. Baker, for example, over a decade of experience as a prosecutor. And I don't think that anybody watching her would say she has an obvious bent towards prosecution in these cases. She has a lot of empathy for the defense in a lot of these cases as well. And she, you know, she's not, you can't look at her and say like she automatically is like, all right, prosecution wins, right? So, but it is an important thing to note. Typically, judges get pulled more often from prosecutors than from defense.
Yes.
And that would have been then before you left in August, is that correct?
Yes.
Before you went off to college in 1902, I believe you testified that your family moved to the Princeton area in 1979. Is that correct?
What date did you say? I went to college in
82.
1982. Yes.
All right. And then between 1979 and 1982, you were living in the Princeton area. Is that correct?
That's, well, yes, Princeton, not in Princeton town, Lawrenceville or
Within an
West
hour?
Windsor. Yes.
Okay. And I believe you indicated that the family, that it would be the Menendez family,
Draco,
had
exactly.
many family gatherings. Is that correct?
I did not indicate that they had family gatherings at that time.
Well, between 1979 and 1982, do you remember testifying about the behavior of the defendants, that they were wild?
I think counsel's using the phrase Menendez.
All right.
All right, if you can rephrase the question, clarify, please.
I'm talking about the family, your mother, your aunt, and your Uncle Jose, that family. All right, do you understand what I'm referring to?
Yes.
And I believe you indicated that there were family gatherings involving the cousins, the aunts and uncles. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Did that also involve your grandparents?
Yes.
And I believe you indicated that these gatherings occurred at your Aunt Terry's house. Is that correct?
Right.
And I believe you indicated that they were frequent. Isn't that what you testified to?
I said they were basically after in any special occasion, any holiday, we always had gatherings. Yes.
And
That's what I call frequent.
All right.
Mother's Day, Father's Day, birthdays. There's a lot of cousins, a lot of birthdays.
So would these gatherings have been at least once a month, would you say?
Yes.
Okay. And did you celebrate all the cousins and the aunt and uncles and your grandparents' birthdays as well?
Everybody's.
And during this period of time, now I'm referring to between 1979 and when you went to college,
Right.
that's the period we're talking about where the gatherings were frequent. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
I believe you indicated that the defendants during this time period would run around the house a lot.
Yes, they did.
Now, most of the cousins are female in your family. Is that correct?
Yes.
And I think you indicated that that you would try to play cards or do something with your female cousins, and that the defendants would be running around. Is that correct?
Yes, I said that.
Now, how far away from the defendant's home did you live during this 3-year time period?
We moved several times within that time period, so it varied each year. But we always lived within a half hour's distance, within 20 minutes to a half hour at the most.
And during that period of 3 years before you went to college, did you ever go to the Menendez's home? That is the defendant's home.
I may have gone to, in passing, not to a gathering that I recall at their home during that period of time.
I believe you indicated that in 1982 you started college. Is that correct?
Yes,
What state did you go to college?
in Pennsylvania.
And how many hours would it take you to return to the family gatherings while you were in college?
It was 3 hours away.
So during that period of time, the 4 years that you were in college, did you attend these gatherings less frequently?
That's correct.
And so you were aware that there were gatherings going on that you did not go to, correct?
Yes, there were.
So
Now,
showing
during
gaps.
that period of 3
gaps
years
in her
when
experience.
before you went to college and you'd have these family gatherings, you indicated that defendants would run around a lot. What were they doing?
It run like it seemed like hide and seek, almost run around the house,
Would they,
hiding and running, and just
would they ever play with any of your boy cousins?
I don't recall it at that time. I don't have any boy cousins, by the way. They're my brothers.
I'm sorry. Well, may I approach Your Honor and get the family tree back up? All right, so the only other male cousins in the family would be your brothers, Peter and Andy, correct?
That's correct.
And so there were 4 girls by Terry and Carlos, and then 3 girls in your family, correct?
That's right.
And so the total number of boy cousins were the 2 defendants and your 2 brothers, correct?
That's right.
Did you ever see your 2 brothers playing with their cousins, the defendants, during this 3-year period of time before you went to college?
They did on occasion.
Now, during these family gatherings, did the adults ever go and leave the kids alone to play together?
I don't know what you mean by go.
Well,
go where?
Sometimes at family gatherings, the adults go do their thing and the children do something different. Did that ever occur at these family gatherings before you went to college?
Yes.
Now, I believe you indicated at some point while you were at college that your brother Andy became close with Erik. Is that correct?
Yes.
And did you notice that they were close when you went to the family gatherings during the 4 years you were in college?
During the 4 years I went in college, that's when I noticed that they would spend time together talking, which I hadn't seen before.
Now, while you were at college, approximately how many of these gatherings would you go to per year?
It's hard for me to say exactly, but it varied depending on how busy I was that year. So it varied per year. I would say definitely Thanksgiving, Christmas, Easter, and Mother's Day and Father's Day.
But less so for birthdays?
Less so for birthdays, yes.
When you went in the summer of 1986 to stay with the Menendez family, how were the arrangements made for you to do that? Was it at your request? Were you invited? How did that come about?
My Aunt Kitty offered for me to stay with her when she found my family was moving, and I wasn't sure that I was ready to move to Florida just yet at the time.
And did you eventually move to Florida, or did you stay on the East Coast?
I know I moved to Florida.
Was that in August of 1986 that you moved to Florida?
Yes.
And that was to where your mother was living, correct?
That's right.
So you were invited by Kitty Menendez to stay with them while your mom moved somewhere else, correct?
That's right.
Was she ever nice to you?
Yes, she was.
Did you ever do things with her?
Yes, many times.
What kind of things would you and she do together, just generally?
We went shopping. She liked to go to a little Danish village outside of Princeton. We went there many times. We would go work out. I like to work out, and she would come with me.
All right, so she was nice to you that summer, is that correct?
I did things with her. She was a fun aunt to be with. Yes, she was always up and ready to do things outside the house.
Did she behave differently around her husband?
Yes.
And could you describe the change in her behavior when she was with you versus when her husband was around?
I don't know if there's just specifically a change in behavior. It was just with me. It was more of a buddy system. We'd be like go do things together, like buddies. When she was at home, it was more of a structured self. I don't know how to describe that.
Did you ever see Mr. Menendez try to humiliate his wife in front of you?
Yes, I did.
And did he ever do things that would make her almost cry?
What I described was he said things that would make her almost cry. Yes.
Now, did you ever see Mr. Menendez hit anyone in the house, yourself included?
I never witnessed any hitting, no.
Did you ever see your Aunt Kitty ever try to defend her sons to their father?
I did. I did on a few occasions.
And what would be the result when she tried to defend her sons against their father?
I don't know if I call it defend, but it was when she would say, "Oh, Jose," or something like that, it would almost redirect the mocking towards her. So it didn't happen very frequently.
I believe you indicated that on occasion, while you were living in the house that summer of '86, that you saw Mrs. Menendez take a pill which you believed to be Valium. Is that correct?
Yes.
Did you ever see any change in her behavior as a result of having taken this pill?
No.
Did you ever see her pass out?
No, I didn't see her pass out.
During this summer that you lived there in 1986, was Mr. Menendez home every night and every weekend?
No.
Okay, could you describe, did he take business trips?
Yes.
And can you describe how frequently he would take them? Was it a weekly occurrence, a monthly occurrence?
Well, I was only there under 2 months, so to my understanding, it was very frequently that he would be out of town.
And would that be for more than a day or two at a time?
Yes.
While you were living there that summer, did anybody else come and spend the night there? Any other relatives or friends of the defendants or anyone that you recall?
While I was staying there, no.
Now, during these dinner conversations, which you've described, were you ever asked to participate in them in terms of listing what you had done, or did you ever participate?
Yes.
And in what regard did you participate?
Well, at the time I was interviewing for jobs. And so I would be asked how my interview went, what kinds of questions they asked me, and how I responded, those kinds of things.
Did they ever offer you help in how to respond to a job interview, either of the parents?
Yes.
Which parent?
Both.
I believe you indicated that you went to at least one tennis match where Erik Menendez played and lost. Is that correct?
Yes.
Did you go to any other tennis matches with that Erik Menendez played in that summer with his mom?
I did not attend any other after that.
Now, I believe that a lot of your testimony on direct examination dealt with Erik Menendez. Was Lyle Menendez home that summer?
I know he was living there. I didn't see Lyle very much.
All right. When you say he was living there, where was he living? Was he living in the house?
His room was sort of off to the left wing of the house, almost separate from the house. So I couldn't, if he was home or not home, most of the time I wouldn't know.
Did he join in these dinner table conversations when he was there?
Sometimes.
How often?
I'm
sorry.
No, I said many times Lyle would not be present.
And did you ever have dinner? Did you ever have dinner with a family where Mr. Menendez was not present because he was out of town?
Yes.
This is getting to the control in the family, like just how much control was asserted over Lyle.
In your
and
presence,
Erik.
did you ever see Mr. Menendez interact with his son Lyle?
Independence could be good for the prosecution.
A few times.
Did he treat,
Not many.
from what you could tell, did he treat Lyle differently from the way he treated Erik?
I wasn't exactly comparing it. You know, it was still the times that I saw it was Lyle's girlfriend was present.
All right, now you say Lyle's girlfriend was present. Was this at a dinner?
It would be, yes, a couple of times at a dinner or in the living room watching a movie. Those were more, that
First
was
time
more
we're
of the
hearing about a
setting where I
girlfriend.
would see Lyle.
During the 2 months that you stayed there in 1986, did Lyle Menendez appear to have a girlfriend during that entire time?
Yes, he had a girlfriend.
And she came to the home frequently?
I rarely saw Lyle without his girlfriend when he was at the house.
I believe you indicated that in the summer of either 1987 or 1988, you and your brother Peter came to California, and you had one day where you were here without your brother Peter. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And when you were staying here when your brother was here, where did you stay?
I only stayed one night at a house. I don't know exactly where the house was located. It was not the Calabasas house, another house.
It was not the Calabasas house?
No, that was under construction.
All right. Did you stay with the Mr. and Mrs. Menendez during that time?
Yes.
May I have a moment, please?
Yes. Any redirect?
Ms. Cano, you described an aspect of your relationship with your Aunt Kitty as like buddies and you'd go out and have fun together.
That's right.
Did you ever see her treat her sons that way, the way she treated you?
No.
They didn't seem to be buddies, did they?
There's a call for speculation.
Sustain.
And you also indicated to Mrs. Bozanich that you don't recall any other relatives or any friends staying over at the house in Princeton while you were there, correct?
Correct.
Do you recall ever meeting any friends of Erik or Lyle, ever?
No.
With respect to your personal knowledge, was your brother Andy the only friend that you ever knew Erik had?
The only person I saw Erik interacting with and speaking with. So to my understanding, I would say yes.
Did Erik or his parents or anybody else in the family in Erik's presence ever talk about any other person who was supposedly a friend of his?
Objection, calls for hearsay.
Sustain.
Was anyone ever identified or pointed out to you as a friend of Erik's besides your own brother?
No.
Now, you said that the few times that you saw Lyle at the house that summer, he was in the company of his girlfriend.
Yes.
What was her name?
Stacy.
And when Stacy was there at the house, was Mr. Menendez less likely to be mocking and humiliating and belittling Lyle?
It would occur, but not like it did in the dinner table. It was different.
And was it primarily Mr. Menendez's way of treating the rest of his family that made you not want to stay there?
I would say it was just the overall unaffectionate ambiance of the household that I felt very uncomfortable with. It's very unlike what I'm used to.
What you were used to.
Right.
I have nothing further.
Anything else?
No, Your Honor.
All right, thank you. You may step down. You're excused. And who is the next witness?
It's a lengthy witness, I think we need for Washington.
All right. How long do you think that hearing will take before she's ready to testify before the juries? Okay, we'll resume, ladies and gentlemen, at 10 minutes after 10 minutes after 11, rather. Don't discuss this case with anyone. Don't form any final opinions about it. And we'll resume at 10 minutes after 11. And we'll see both juries back here then. Defendants are in court. All counsel are present. The jurors are not.
Okay.
Counsel indicate they have a issue to resolve regarding the testimony of the next witness.
Your Honor,
Okay. I'm going to push past the hearing and we'll see if so with this segment, if there's any more testimony by the end of this one, I'm going to skip forward to try to get to it. And if we get to the end and there's no more, then we'll cut it off for the day. And so let's take a look here. We're going to skip ahead and
rather than
computer
go through the
screen
statements
show up.
that we
Here we go.
have from this
Oops.
witness, bit by bit, that
Municipal court.
Okay.
Nor is it
arguing.
Specifically addressing
And they didn't know then who was going to. That's in June of 1990.
report of every
Okay.
conversation.
I think this is going to be the end of it.
Ms. Abrams.
And then his younger son,
Yep.
his attitude towards the boy.
Okay.
Be applicable.
Okay. So yeah, that is the end of it. Well, that was still quite a bit today. It wasn't as spicy as the other cousins that we have heard from, but it was still spicy. You guys, look at this. Isn't this wonderful? I'm so excited. I'm so excited to take my robot back with me. So anyway, this was quite a bit. So we heard from Charles Wadlington, the tennis coach, Then we heard from Meredith Geisler, the lifeguard / swim coach. And it was not as spicy as some of the stuff that we've heard about, but it was very confirming. Hearing the same thing from Marianne Cano about the dinner time business-like atmosphere. It was very cold. It was very like question and answer kind of session, that kind of stuff. It was confirming, which is good for the defense, because that's really, I mean, this is what we need to do in any trial, right? Is you have a narrative. The more that narrative is reaffirmed by other independent witnesses, especially these are different cousins that came at different times throughout their childhood or young adult life, when they came in these different snippets. And it's easy to look at any individual one of them and say, well, you weren't there for the whole thing. But then when you have other cousins coming in and they're filling in other gaps in that overall timeline over the years, then you see that it's the same thing. They all observe the same damn thing, that you can then kind of extrapolate from there, like, okay, this did exist all the time. This was the culture of the house. This was how dinner time was. So this intensity is ever present. So these kinds of things get reaffirmed along the way, even though they don't sound as shocking to us anymore, because we have, you know, in a weird way, your brain also adapts to hearing the kinds of shocking things that we're hearing. It's not as shocking as some of the other stuff that we heard, but it's still shocking. It's still abusive. It's still, you know, it still leaves an impression. So having that reaffirmed is very good for the defense. Prosecution, I think that they did draw some blood in some of their cross-examination. Charles Wadlington, he came across as very caring for the Menendez brothers. That can also have the impact of coming across as a little bit biased. So that's something that is always possible with a witness that is coming in for one side, where you can tell that they really care. Sometimes that care can kind of shape facts or shape their delivery of facts. That happened in the Gwyneth Paltrow trial, right? There was the friend of the plaintiff who turns out was colorblind. And so there was some stuff that he started to come across as a little bit bendy because he was trying to be overly helpful to the plaintiff's case. There were a couple of moments that could have been interpreted that way with Charles Wadlington. Especially because he's, you know, we then have the comparison to his own experiences with his own father. And so, which to me, it doesn't seem like that's something that would be relevant, because anytime there were questions of other witnesses where they asked, you know, like, well, what about you and your own kids, or how did your parents make out all the time, like things like that, that was like, that is not relevant, but one could compare what they are seeing with the Menendez family in various aspects with like these other experiences. And to a certain extent, you could say it's helpful to see how someone is viewing comparative situations, but it's a little bit too far of a reach to adequately bring in you know, to adequately bring in that comparison and have it actually be helpful to the jury. So, but anyway, I think overall this was very interesting. We have now got, I really should count up how many witnesses we've heard from so far, because we have heard from quite a few at this point. So, but it's been good. It's been good so far. So, okay. thank you so much to everyone for being here, for joining me. I know this was not a normal Menendez Monday. It was a Menendez Trial Tuesday, or a classic Trial Tuesday. So I really appreciate your flexibility, guys, and coming to hang out. And thank you, of course, to all of the mods for always being there for disagreement in the chat, and healthy disagreement in the chat, and helping to promote that friendly environment so people can voice their opinions, but also, be respectful. And thank you guys for always partaking in that culture, to everyone that is interacting and discussing these cases, because I know it is totally possible to come to different conclusions on this one. Some people have some very different opinions on the outcome of what should have happened on the back end of this trial. So it's, I love seeing the discussion and the disagreement in the chat, and seeing that done in a way that is still respectful and caring. So, okay. I think that for me about does it. Next week is probably going to be another Tuesday, because I am flying again all day next Monday. So actually, I should say that now. 100% next week is going to be on another Tuesday. So be ready for that. I'm going to post about it again as well, and so that there is a reminder. And yeah, that's about it. So thank you guys. Thank you. And I will see you guys in the next video.